I'd like to welcome everyone to the March 28th, 2024 Landmarks Commission meeting, whether you're joining us in person or virtually. I'll read the preamble. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 101.021 of the codified ordinances of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by roll call vote. Recusal from any case due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the beginning of the presentation. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, virtual attendees will use the raised hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found on the participants panel on the desktop and mobile versions and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raised hand icon again and mute your microphone. Call-in users can unmute using *6. All meeting activity is being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter submitted through proper channels have been considered. Communication with members of this body must follow proper channels for consideration. Any comments received by the stated deadline are collected by the Landmark staff and disseminated to the commission members prior to any scheduled meeting.
All right, I'll go over the meeting rules and procedures. The chair will call each agenda item, and then each applicant will be invited to proceed through their presentation. Each presentation should be completed prior to questions and comments from the commission in order to facilitate a smooth presentation. Once the presentation is concluded, the chair will ask Landmark staff to summarize Design Review Committee recommendations and any public comments received. The deadline for public comments is noon on the Tuesday prior to any regularly scheduled Cleveland Landmarks Commission meeting. Any received comments are distributed to the commission members prior to the meeting, and staff will also identify any members of the public present and scheduled to speak. Public comment is allowed at the discretion of the chair, and any individual providing public comment is permitted 2 minutes to speak to the agenda item in which they have an interest. The chair will then request a recommendation from staff. The commission will then begin deliberation and project review. Any commission member except the chair may make a motion at any point after an agenda item has been called.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, with that, we'll call the March 28th, 2024 Landmarks Commission meeting to order. Dan, please call the roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Dreyer?
Here.
Mr. Dulick? Councilmember Gray? Director Wong?
Present.
Mr. Lozier?
Here.
Mr. Sandbury? Mr. Trasick?
Here.
Dr. Williams?
Here.
Ms. Trott? And Mr. Strickland.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have quorum. I'd just like to note, in addition to the commission members, we have Kevin Roberts and Patricia McGinty Aston from the Law Department, as well as Jessica Beam, Carl Brunges, and myself from the Landmark staff present.
All right. Thank you. We'll start with certificates of appropriateness. Case number 24-025, the Cultural Gardens, India Cultural Garden at 1190 Martin Luther King Drive. Sculpture base replacement. Would the applicant please introduce themselves and tell us about your project?
Yes, certainly. We have a clear to change slides. Okay, you want to sit?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's more comfortable.
Oh, yes. I need to see.
Yeah, there should be yeah, just the forward button or the one that aims to the right. There you
Nope, you're going too far.
You do it.
Let's go. There we go. Let's go back a
There's
little bit.
a
There we
little
go.
bit of a lag, so
Okay.
there it is.
Am I doing this? Okay.
Yeah, whoever,
This is in regards to the base repair for the statue, the Gandhi statue that resides at the India Cultural Gardens. And go this way. Okay, the agenda, we are going to introduce ourselves. I'm Shelley with Mario Stone, and this is Mario with Mario Stone, and we've been asked by the India Cultural Gardens to do the repair.
My name is Hira Rane. So I'm here representing on behalf of FICA, which is the Federation of India Community Association. The Indian Cultural Garden comes under our FICA umbrella.
And then we will review the statue location, the statue and existing base composition, pictures of some of the damage to the existing granite base, explanation of the project, and then drawings and paperwork. This is Mario Stone, Mario's company, and we are at 13,000 Brook Road, North Royalton, Ohio. We do fabrication and installation, manufacturing of countertops, statues, repairs, maintenance. The location of the Cultural Gardens is here between Superior and St. Clair, located along East Martin Luther King. And there you see lot number 37 is the actual India Cultural Garden. In the center of the garden is the Gandhi statue, and you can see it has a large base with a small gray cap, and that's actually the part that's going to be repaired, not the stone, the black stone that Gandhi's resting on, the cap base underneath. That large pedestal base will remain. It's just that top gray cap that will be repaired. Replaced, sorry. Statue and base composition, the statue is made of bronze. And the base that will be repaired is some type of gray granite. None of us were around when it was originally installed, so we'll find out more. And you can see here, there are a couple of photos. Here's one of the seams. You can see how the what is that, caulk?
Yeah, it fell out.
It's
The glue fell out.
disintegrated and fell out from weathering, sun exposure, exposing the crack. And here's another actual crack in the cap itself from weathering on one of the sides. And these were just a few of the photos of some of the damage. And you can see underneath the caulking how it's disintegrated as well. The explanation of the project itself. First, you have to obtain the approval and permits. One of them would be through your committee. Then the 9-inch thick granite base cap removal would be first. And statue removal. Then we'd transport the statue for safekeeping. And the new base would be built. The base would be finished. The statue would be reinstalled on the new base. And then lastly, we'd go over our insurance for the company, the quotes, and any additional fees that would be assessed. So first we'll start with the permits and approval. That would be required by the city of Cleveland and obtained by your committee. And that us as Mario Stone would need these approved and these permits approved before we would begin work on the project, obviously. So to remove the statue, we would need a crane to do that, to hoist up the statue off of the base. And we'll talk more about the crane. The base demolition, Mario and his crew would disassemble the base. The existing base material removal and disposal, the material would be moved from the site of the Indian Cultural Garden and taken back to Mario Stone, our company, for proper disposal. It wouldn't be left on site or anybody else responsible for taking that away. The statue would be transported by truck from the India Cultural Gardens to Mario Stone for safekeeping. We would keep it on our site until it would be time to re-establish onto the new base. When the new base is complete, then the statue would be transported back from Mario Stone to the Indian Cultural Garden for reinstallation. So Mont Granite is a company that I believe is part of the India Cultural Gardens Committee.
No, Mont Granite is an independent granite supplier.
Okay, they are the ones who are willing to supply the new base material, which will be gray granite. So we are, as Mario Stone, we're not aware of the origin of the new base granite because they're the ones who are supplying it to us. Then, excuse me, it'll be glued with granite epoxy at the seams and being attached to that new foundation base that will remain. And it will be built using the supplies, the material supplied by Mont Granite. And Mario Stone will fabricate it and install it. Mario will install it and use the epoxy to do the finishing. And then brings us to the new base finishing. The new granite base cap will be sealed between the existing base foundation that will remain at any connection points. And it will be sealed anywhere at a connection point with the Integra glue, which Mario will use, which is actually UV resistant. So it will maintain integrity from the weathering and the elements of the sun and the environment. So the reinstallation of the Gandhi statue itself, the statue will be set on top of the new granite base. In order to secure the statue to the new base, the holes will be bored into, pre-existing holes will be bored into the new granite base, and metal rods will run from the statue down through the base to secure everything. This is a copy of our certificate of insurance. And over to the middle right, you see limits, and that's our coverage there. So there's plenty of coverage under that account. Okay. The quote and additional fees. Here's our original quote to the India Cultural Gardens. You'll notice there in blue at the bottom, rental crane and truck fees if needed. We don't know if someone will be providing from the committee like Mont, or somebody will be providing a truck large enough and a crane large enough for us to use at this point. We're still waiting to hear word on that. Us at Mario Stone, we do not have a truck and crane large enough to move the statue and transport it. So either someone will be providing that to us, or we will have to assess additional fees to be able to rent that for the project. And that's stated in the quote, to be determined. Okay. And then we have drawings and renderings of the new base. And you'll see here next, it will be the full base that will remain at the bottom. And then I circled the cap that will be the one that will be replaced up there at the top. And then we have additional prints here, if anyone wishes to see. This is an aerial view and dimensions of the base that will be replaced. Top cap drawing piece. And that's it.
All right, thank you very much.
Mhm.
And so this go to Cultural Gardens or Design Review Committee?
It did, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a letter from Lori Ashley. She was not able to make it this early to the meeting. But her letter states the Design and Preservation Committee of the Cultural Gardens Federation approved the repair plans for the Gandhi statue in the India Garden at its February 16th, 2024 meeting. Approval is contingent upon submission of electronic plans, which the India Garden contractors have since provided. The CCGF board approved the plans at its February meeting.
All right, thank you. And staff recommendation?
Mr. Chair, staff supports this proposal. We still have some questions, and I don't know if there was just, I didn't hear it. When the statue was put on, they use the same type of epoxy and such like that around the base so water infiltration doesn't happen. There's also permits not only for this, but for the street obstruction, or I think we're going to need to know the staging details, or at least having been to the PetBot committee and work with our streets department to figure out how this is all going to get set up once you have all those final details as well. But otherwise, it's a good idea, and we're glad this is happening. Support the project.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so we'll open it up now for commission questions and comments. I can't think, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of clarifying questions. So the intent is that the new base will match sort of exactly the design and detail of the
Yes.
systems.
Yes. There is a 4-inch radiuses and like a little half round edge on it. It's 9-inch thickness, same thickness.
Color's the same.
Only the difference, color is the same. It's a honed finished granite, so it's not a polished, so it's really easy to match it. I think it comes from China, I'm not sure really, but it's a gray granite. Most of the time comes from China, but the only difference between this cap and existing one is we installing a solid cap.
No joints.
No joints, no opening in the middle, the water can get there.
No seams.
No seams. So it's gonna be a solid piece of granite. I mean, it's 9-inch granite doesn't break when it's a solid. It doesn't really, so that's the why it broke,
Great. And then I might just recommend that once the granite has been identified, to maybe submit that with either photos or material samples to staff, just to confirm that,
The color and-
that everything looks, like it
Yeah.
should. But I think this is great. I'm excited glad to hear that, that our treasures are being maintained appropriately. So thank you for going through all the motions and all this. And I wish you great luck with the project.
That'll be fine.
He had the question of, or somebody had the question of the epoxy, and I had stated in the presentation it will be a better quality glue. It's Integra glue, which is actually UV resistant, so it won't have the same degradation.
The main reason why this happened is because of the seams and opening. They had a big opening. There's like only maybe 8 inches of this base, and you can see it's a 9 feet by 4. It was only 9 inches or 8 holding it that around. There was 4 different pieces with the seams. And even if I had to use my glue that I'm using now, they still will fall apart. So at this point now, we're doing a big base and we'll make sure we're only dealing with the bottom seam. There is no other seams. Under the
Connection.
statue will be only 1-inch holes when they had like, what was a 6 feet by 3 feet opening. And the concrete is down like below the stone like this much, the water was coming there.
If I could make maybe one recommendation, in order to help with the water coming off of the stone, I'm wondering if it makes sense to sort of router in
Yeah, we will
in a
do
drip
that.
edge.
Yeah, we forgot to put that in,
Okay.
but I did mention that in the
Okay.
first meeting. I had a meeting with you guys over the, I think TeamViewer or something. I remember
That was
you.
the cultural nerds.
Yeah, so I did say that, yeah,
Okay.
that we're gonna cut that, that's another thing, that's a really good recommendation.
Great.
Because it'll stop there, it'll drip down, it won't go on the base.
Any other commission members with raised hands. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, no, I have one question. Does this type of work, reinstalling the base and the statue, does this require a building permit approval, building department approval?
Yes.
It does.
Yes.
Yeah. And your presentation to us is all part of that process. So the status of your project based on our vote will go to the building department.
So do we need to do a separate application to the building department or it's not required?
Sure. The Rockefeller Park and the Cleveland Cultural Gardens are the property of the city of Cleveland. So any installation, because this is a large scale, heavy project, or any changes requires a building permit. Because there's safety concerns, they have to make sure everything is to code. So you will have to, once this is part of it, you will apply for a building permit, you will have to get a street obstruction permit and all these different things, and we can get you in contact with the different departments to get you through that.
Okay.
But you do have to have a building permit for this work. And you'll have to have your drawings and the measurements and weights and all that information. This, because it's a designated Cleveland landmark, this process says that what you are proposing is appropriate, and we are saying, yes, you can move forward with what you are doing.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Seeing no other questions, the biggest question that I have is the, logistics of removing the statue, where the crane will be placed, proper dunnage or support of the crane, so there's no damage to any of the pavers or infrastructure that exists. So that will all have to be developed, and that would be part of what's required for the building, as Carl had mentioned.
We're pretty good with it. We certified monument dealer, so we install all those big monuments, through the cemeteries and stuff. So we know that you can't damage nothing around and
Right.
stuff,
All right. So just include that as part of your submission.
Yeah.
In terms of what's planned for the utilization of the crane.
Yeah.
Right. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Can make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Lozier?
I make a motion to approve as presented, with the condition that, final review and approval of the, granite material is reviewed by staff. And also to incorporate a drip edge around the bottom part of the perimeter of the stone cap.
Second, this is Joyce Wong.
Okay. Was that Dr. Williams?
No, that's Director Wong, I believe.
Oh, okay. Director Warren. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Dan, please call the vote.
And Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Ms. Anderson? Okay. Mr. Dryer?
Yes.
Councilmember Gray?
I just want to answer my say.
Abstain, okay. Director Wong? Mr. Lozier?
Yes.
Mr. Sandberry?
Yes.
Mr. Trassick?
Yes.
Dr. Williams?
Yes.
And Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes
Unanimous.
Yes.
unanimously.
Okay, congratulations.
Yeah,
Good
thank
luck
you,
with your
thank you.
project. All right, we'll move on to the second case, number 22026, Gordon Square Historic District. The Lebanon, formerly Waverly Oak Phase 2, 5416 Detroit Avenue. Revision to Pocket Park and Plaza. Would the applicant please introduce yourself and present your project?
Sure. I'm Justin Strizzi with Bond Street. We're the developers of Wellion here. This is our fifth or sixth time presenting to this group over the last few years. First time was 3 years ago, last month. Oh, it's forwards actually backward. It's forwards backwards. Okay. Okay, so the subject here today is a landscape area that's part of the overall project, but it's kind of a separate parcel, separate permit. We presented on this a couple of times, most recently in July of last year. This is a resident parking lot that we have to the east of the residential property. When we were here in July, we proposed essentially a landscape strip because we're in a PRO. So to satisfy the PRO and the setback, we proposed a landmark strip here. It was adjacent to us to the east is an event center. They have kind of a full opacity white fence that separates the sidewalk from their space. Our proposal at that time was to continue that to create a unified look across the landscape, kind of splitting our landscape area in half. In that meeting in July, it was suggested that that fully opaque white fence was either removed or redesigned to be at least a 50% open and black aluminum fence. We, at that time, it was also part of the conversation was including some benches in that space, potentially for seating. Now, we were supposed to, which we did not do, we were supposed to include the staff in kind of the selection of benches and how those benches or seating would be included in the area. We did not do that. The park went through a little bit of a redesign process between July and today, and actually an installation. So what exists today, or what has been installed today, is the fence was half removed and created an enclosed area where you can see kind of the forever lawn. It's a turfed area that is included, enclosed patio, dog space, and then the rest of the landscape is dense enough where, you know, our understanding of the PRO is one, to create a landscape separation between the pedestrian experience and the cars, and to create a visual barrier between the sidewalk and the parked cars as well. You can see here our proposed location of public seating within this landscape area, and then some specifics of the landscaping that has been installed as far as the plant species. What you can see in the top left is where we had previously proposed this solid opaque white fence to continue from our neighbor to the east.
Is that the red line?
That's the red line, yep. So the ultimate design opens up more of the landscape in the public realm and then introduces an additional amenity to the block in this enclosed patio dog park space. This is a rendering of what the space will look like as matured. These, I think they're called swamp white oaks. As mature, they can get up to 70 feet. I think this rendering here probably has them around 30. So it could be a pretty substantial presence on the street with some dense, lush landscaping as well. And there you can see kind of in the right side of the screen what our neighbor has as far as fencing and their approach to the PRO. This is as it exists, actually a couple weeks ago, not today. As of yesterday, most of the landscaping has been installed, and here you have just the trees. There's the fence that's installed and the turf as well. There's kind of the approach as you're coming from the west. And then just some adjacent images that we can get to if we need to, but that is the entirety of the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Did this go back to the design review committee?
This did not, since it was, I guess, last reviewed by the Landmarks Commission. We just brought it directly to the Landmarks Commission. So there's no design review committee report, but I can, I guess, give the staff report if you're ready.
Is there any public comment?
No.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm ready for that. Let's have the staff report.
So essentially, as Mr. Strizzi said, this has been before you guys a few other times. It first came for concept review February 24th, 2022. It got an approval on March 24th, 2022. The motion was to approve the issuance of the certificate of appropriateness with a recommendation for option 1 of the park space and conditional, or and a condition to return for the final landscaping and details. So there, you know, at that point, they had a couple different options for how they were going to treat this. The commission preferred option 1, which is this one. So this is the one that was approved with them to come back with final details. When they did come back with final details, that was last year, July 27th, and they presented what you see on the screen now. There was a motion to approve, as Mr. Strizzi said, the certificate of appropriateness with the condition that they work with staff on seating in the green space and for the fence to either be removed on the Detroit frontage or be revised to no more than 4 feet in height and 50% opacity. Then just, I guess, a few weeks ago, one of the inspectors was out following up on the permit process and doing a permit inspection and flagged it as them having installed an illegal dog park, which kind of caught us by surprise. So I reached out to Mr. Strizzi. He explained that they had installed the fence and kind of caught us up to speed on what where they were. And, you know, we discussed the fact that they were supposed to engage with staff and, you know, that step was missed. So I went out the other day just to check it out in person and get some photos. But, you know, essentially, you know, like Mr. Strizzi said, they've installed a fenced-in area, which I don't think was the intent. I think the commission wanted it to be more open, essentially like a buffer from the sidewalk to the parking lot. There's also this, you know, desire, I think, primarily from the community that this be more of a park space, like a little pocket park, and so I think that's what they were going for with this. But the enclosed area here it feels like a dog park with the AstroTurf and everything. It kind of creates an enclosed space when I think the intention was to have it feel more open and welcoming, but now it feels kind of closed off. So that kind of brings us up to where we are now. So I guess it was.
Yeah, I just want to touch on a few things mentioned there. The change from some of the earlier concepts in, call it February, March of 22 to the final presentation in July of 23 was mostly a response to local design review level, where the desire was for mostly greenery and landscaping, and 1, less hardscape, and 2, less, there was less of concern of really function from the lower level and more of a green landscape, I guess, relief along that stretch of the street. So the transition from the earlier plans with a lot of hardscaping and paths was mostly a response to the local design review level.
Okay. And so I'm going to open up the comments from the commission. What I recall from the last meeting was a discussion about this little pocket park being more of a community space. I assume there would be paths through the park and an inviting space, not just for occupants of the apartment, but for neighbors in the area.
So, you know, I kind of refreshed my recollection as well and rewatched the presentation in advance of this. And the comments were mostly that the intent of the PRO is, 1, the landscape strip satisfied the intent of the PRO, is what we were told. And that 2, there was a desire for there to be some kind of seating within the park. Now, paths and walkways wasn't discussed, and it was part of our earlier presentation or earlier concepts. That was then changed again as a response to the local level, which led us to this plan here. And as you can see in this plan that was approved in July, there wasn't, it's ground cover, right? There isn't grass, there aren't paths. So that kind of walk through park experience really was not part of this design that was ultimately approved. Now, I think part of the motivation or thought process of including some benches was to somewhat activate, right, this park. And that's what we are trying to do with including some of the bench seating within the landscaping as well.
As presented here, though, the bench seating is just at the back of the curb,
That's right.
the back of
Mhm.
the sidewalk.
Sure, yeah.
It's not in the park space, which is what I envisioned from
Mhm.
prior presentations.
Sure.
And I don't recall ever a presentation with the inclusion of a fenced enclosure with AstroTurf.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, and you know, when we look at kind of the original presentation as of July and the fence location, at that time, the suggestion was to either remove the fence or replace the fence with a 50% open 4-foot high fence, which would have spanned, based on that plan, the entire length of the landscape strip, essentially bifurcating the landscape area into a public and private space with that design.
There was
that
also a
approved.
suggestion to remove the fence completely.
Well, it was a suggestion, but we were given the option
Mhm.
of remove or replace, right? And in a replacement, if we were to have replaced it with all the way across east to west open fence, it still would have created kind of the separation of the private and public space.
At a depth considerably behind the back of the sidewalk.
At a depth that is, if you look at, here, the best place to see it might be here. So there's the kind of best comparison of where our neighbors, that red line is where our neighbor's white fence starts,
Mhm.
continues to the west. And then where you see currently how the landscaping for 2/3 of the site, half, 2/3 of the site,
Yeah.
continues the full depth.
And do you know what the dimension is between the back of the sidewalk and that red line?
So the entire depth to the deepest on the northwest corner is, I believe, 37 and change.
Mhm.
So call it 16-ish feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
a
which
substantial distance.
sure, which still exists today, right? So on 2/3 of the site, you have, you know, call it 30 to 34 feet of depth with no fence.
Okay. But you knew that the approval that you received was with conditions
That's correct.
that were supposed to be reviewed with staff.
Absolutely.
And now we've got a condition that is not compliant with the
That-
approval that you had received.
That's right. It's a different design that was approved. That's right. Mhm.
Right, and you have a neighbor right across the street who's developing a multifamily home that installed windows and doors that were not compliant with the approval that he had received from the Landmarks Commission. And a few meetings ago, he was ordered to remove those improvements
Sure,
and replace them
sure.
with what was approved.
Sure. Yeah, I think was there another?
I'm sure other commission members are about to weigh in.
Yeah, I think that what we, you know, and the way that we had communicated with Dan and with the staff was that this was an oversight. And we're trying to look at it in the context of the entire project. Our desire to be engaging with the public, taking feedback through the public process. It wasn't an intentional skirting of the public process. It was an oversight that happened between July and December.
Okay. Other commission members, comments or questions?
Yes,
Yeah.
comment. Since I'm not quite clear what's going on with the pocket park. So my question is this going to be a pocket park or a dog park?
So
And then you said it's for public and private. So you got so many scenarios of what
Sure.
this park's supposed to be, which I get it, cause we have pocket parks on the east side of town, but I know that it can comprise with everything.
Sure.
It could be a enjoyable park for everything in Pocket Park, but you have so many scenarios where they, so is it a dog park only, or is it a Pocket Park or private and public use?
Well, in this layout, it's both. The landscaping includes seating that's public. The dog park, it also includes access control, so it can be either public or with hours restricted or with access restricted.
So listening to my colleague, what is not in compliance?
The design that was approved last July did not include a dog park, and now it does.
Was that part of the,
Hmm.
is that part of the structure that should have been, or you just put that in without without notice, without notifying?
That's right. It didn't go through the design process, the design review process.
Okay.
Okay, Councilman. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The thing that's going in, from this rendering, it looks like it's seasonal. I was just wondering if there's landscaping that stays green all year that'll help, mask the area behind it.
I don't know that answer specifically, but I do think that, and I'm not a landscape architect, the yellow plants in the back, as well as what you see on the right, that's red, that's how that exists, I think in the fall and through the winter. But I don't know for sure what all of this looks like through the winter. These are the same species that were approved in July.
Okay. I understand the need for the dog park. When you have a building this big in these days, to be competitive, a landlord has to rent to people with dogs. So I kind of understand that. Hopefully we can, so that you can maintain some sort of a dog park and still keep the pocket park as part of the overall design. So those are my comments, at least at this point.
Yeah, and I think that if what we can work towards is adding to the park to make it more, include paths, include additional seating. If it's the desire of the commission to include some hardscape within there, that's something that we would be open to as well. As opposed to removing, I think that would be our desire. Because if we remember, I would think the natural place for something like a dog park would probably be in the courtyard of the Wellian building, which is an entirely public courtyard. A lot of that came through the process with the Azteca Coalition all those years ago, was to make that an entirely public space, right? The coalition has use of that space, a couple times a year if they wish. We elected not to make that a private courtyard, which would have probably been a natural fit for this, but that was part of the design and public process at that time, was to make that a public space in the courtyard.
Excluding it as being available for a dog park.
That's right, yeah.
Can we go back to the site plan? Is there some kind of a green space in the northwest corner of the parking?
In the northwest corner.
Northeast.
Oh, yes. Yeah, there's a tree and some plantings in the, it's not shown in this plan, but that's,
There was.
yeah,
right
that
there.
still exists. Yeah.
And is that sufficient size to work as a
No,
Dog park.
it's much smaller. That's
smaller than
just
the
comparing
enclosed place that you've?
yeah,
you
comparing
want
it to
to build.
the parking spaces, that looks like it's probably 18 by 18. Just guessing. And again, I think what we were wrong in how we handled the design and the install, no doubt about it. What we would again hope to kind of work through with this group is is there something we could add, right? Whether it's additional screening or additional function to the pocket park that makes this, more acceptable.
So a little editorial comment. I think this is a fantastic project.
Thank you.
And, we've all been involved with you in this project
Yeah.
for a long time.
Yeah.
And know what you've gone through to just bring the community together, to bring the, prior owners of the property together and create space that's meaningful for them. I think it's a great project.
Thank you.
And just, when we see situations like this, it's very disappointing.
Yeah.
That, I think that our meetings are meant to be collaborative
Yeah.
and produce a better product. And oftentimes we do.
I agree.
And that was kind of the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. And first of all, thanks for saying that. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think because of the scale of the project, people sometimes assume we're a big team, but we have one full-time person and you're looking at them. So it was my fault that we did a different process here. And like you said, going through everything that we went through with the public and with this group, we're disappointed as well that, hopefully this isn't the last time we're here, right? But that we'd like to end on, a positive note.
Just had one quick question if I can.
Mhm.
Is there, with the AstroTurf in that area and then all the plantings, is there water run to that? Is there a way to like hose down the turf?
Yeah,
in
so the
August
side
when
of-
it gets real dry and
Yep.
smelly?
So there's a water, a hose bib on the east side of the Banter building. Yeah. And our maintenance staff from Welling Property is responsible for this as well.
Okay. Well, any further comments?
Yeah.
Mr. Lozier?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Listen, I understand what you're trying to achieve here. I think it is unfortunate that you didn't go through the right processes because I don't think that this body would have approved a dog park in that location based on sort of the discussions that happened prior to this. I think looking at the photos, it really becomes I have some challenges with sort of the fenced off nature and the fact that it's AstroTurf. It's a completely sort of foreign thing than what I think the initial intent of the park wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest that you explore other locations for a dog park. Looking at the back corner in that green space, I know that it's smaller than what was installed, but maybe you can look at incorporating, lose a parking spot or two to make that area larger, or in the area between the two buildings, allowing that to be an area for dogs to run around. I think it creates more of a barrier and in a way sort of more egalitarian that it's this fenced off thing that's right on the public right away when this really does want to be a more public space and not a fenced off space. And I understand the reason you want it fenced off for the dogs, but I don't know that I don't think that I can support sort of where things are today.
Yeah.
As presented.
Sure, and I understand it. I think what there's a couple things we could do. One is to make it accessible to the public, dog park, right? That's something we could do. And again, looking at kind of the context, right? I'll go back a little bit to kind of when we were going through the approval process of kind of the scale of the landscape strip and the parking itself, right? There was this balance between the desire, some from this commission, some from the community, to maximize parking, but also to meet the kind of expectations or goals of the PRO. revenue wise, if we were just out for every last dollar, we would have just squeezed the landscape strip probably to even smaller than is today without the dog park, right? And just put in more parking spaces, because that's the, most highest and best value you can get here from a pure dollar perspective. But that wasn't the approach we took. And then also looking at kind of the immediate context around us, how the PRO and the landmark district is kind of different approaches to that, right? I do think that what we installed and what we're presenting is a better pedestrian experience than what we're seeing even from some of our immediate neighbors.
But again, I think
Process aside, right, which we were wrong in.
again, I think if this was discussed initially as incorporating a dog park, it would be a much different conversation to be having today. And because I don't know that, one, we would necessarily, maybe we would have approved a dog park, but maybe not in the configuration or the location that is sort of existing today.
Sure. Yeah.
So.
And I think that I appreciate that. And I think that, again, if we could, if we could kind of think through ideas or proposals on how can we take what exists today and make it something that's acceptable, right? How can we either add paths, add seating, add more landscaping, add screening or banners, as some of our neighbors have done. I think that's where I would like the conversation to go, and I don't know if that's possible. That's kind of what, would be, I think, the most beneficial.
Yeah, so we see, projects of this type all the time. And oftentimes, consideration of pets, it's presented as a pet relief area as opposed to a dog park. I mean, we see that all the time, but it's usually grass and it's not totally fenced in. It's just a convenient area for residents that have pets to provide relief for their pets. So if you created more of a pet relief area rather than a caged in area, that's something that I would be able to support.
Yeah, and if we could, is it possible to focus on the landscape area, right? What can we add to the landscape area that makes this more acceptable, right? And again, if we look at kind of this amenity and this use and this design in the context of the street, in the context of the block, and you look at, neighboring properties which are entirely fenced off, right? Entirely enclosed, no landscape, no visual separation between cars, right? No attempt to improve the pedestrian experience.
Right.
That's kind of how we.
But the PRO was probably not in place when those projects were developed.
Our neighbor was opened in 2021.
Okay, go ahead with your presentation.
Oh no, that's the entirety of the presentation.
I think it's just, if I may, speaking of PROs, I'm not even sure that a dog park or, I'm not sure what zoning thinks about this. So we brought it before you guys, but we can certainly take it before our zoning folks and find out, is this even allowable?
And they're based on our review and our architect's review of the code, there is no mention or specific requirements or guidance around dog parks in the city code at all. It discusses dogs within city parks, but not, so this isn't a non-permitted use. It's not defined at all within the city code.
This is Director Huang. I can jump in and apologize since I had to dip out briefly for a phone call, so I'm catching up right now. I do think that the spirit of the PRO is to see active space. So the goal is essentially not to have car storage fronting the street, but really to have something where people would actively use, that you would see people using, that could be accessible from the street. And to that end, to your point, I think that having a public dog park would be way more way more open to that, rather than it being a private space that is only for the select residents of that but rather how do we make it much more of a privately owned public space so that people who are walking their dog in Detroit can pop in, see their neighbors, and be able to, socialize. Because I do think, observing other cities, I think Detroit has a really great turf-based dog park in Midtown. In their Midtown in Detroit, it does really bring people together, and there's activation that happens with food trucks, because there's a crowd that's gathered there. So I don't think it's all for naught. I do think that you ought to examine how to beautify, or maybe place some amenities in the dog park, whether it's planters, and I don't know how planters work with dogs, but other kind of playful items, like making sure that it is accessible to the street and to the public. That would be something preferred from my end, to make it much more of an active space.
We're entirely on board with that. It's a great suggestion. I think we're open to it being public. I think we'd probably want to just maybe restrict overnight hours, right? Maybe for everyone, not just for public. And in consideration that our neighbor has events that we want to, be mindful of as well. But yeah, that's absolutely something we can do, and we can look to add planters, seating within the park as well.
Yeah, in addition of a walk, kind of a serpentine walk, maybe to activate the space.
Okay.
May I say something that's going to the dog park? We just recently in the dog park and over in the Eastern Park, in the area that I'm a counselor in.
Mm-hmm.
I apologize. Hey, to the chair, can't really hear Councilman Gray.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Will this pass down?
I'm saying that, we recently just got approved for a dog park over in New Eastern Park. Be setting it up because we have so many dogs walking in the park. Other people are uncomfortable with other people's dogs, and they don't have their own space. So we just got approved for the dog park to be set up in New Eastern Park, but it was we'll talk with Capital Projects, so they set it up in the back corner off from the tennis court, whereas it would interfere with the other areas of the enjoyment of the park. So by me just learning this, I found out that having a dog park, it has to be so big, so large. You have to have a separation of small and dogs, small and large dogs. You can't keep them together in the same enclosure because of the bigger dogs will attack the small dogs. So they got two separate sections for the large dogs and the small dogs. They have the same amenities for them to play on.
Sure.
And then they also had the water line. So listening to my colleagues, they are correct. We have to look at the aspect of the dogs enjoying themselves, and also the private and public part of people who want to be part of that. So also in that enclosure, they made benches for the dog owners to sit in that area per se, whereas it's private for the dog owners and walkers, but it's separate from the entire park, whereas it would interfere with everyone else enjoying themselves.
Sure.
So you have to look at that at a whole. So by them approving the dog park over there, where you have it set up in the enclosure where people can still come and sit. Maybe some people don't want to come and sit around dogs regardless. They have that little part, that little enclosure where the dogs will be.
Yeah.
So you have to look at a whole on the entire aspect of how people will be comfortable in that small enclosure that you already have.
Yeah.
So I just want to just add that to
thanks for that.
the understanding of the dog park.
Ms. Anderson still has her hand up.
Okay. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a building near where I live that has a little dog park for their residents. And, I see the residents in that park, and they're playing ball with their dogs, and the dogs are, chasing each other around, and it's a very nice way to activate the area. It's kind of fun to see. So, I think it's an amenity that, could work with this building. If it'd be possible to do maybe a mixture of, a very hardy turf and maybe pea gravel as opposed to the AstroTurf, I think that would be superior all the way around. So I think there's probably a way to make this work. Those are comments.
So I think my biggest takeaways are, let's work towards this being a public space, both the enclosed dog area and the rest of the landscaping. How do we incorporate some more activation within the landscape area, be it paths, additional seating incorporated into the landscaping, not just set out onto the sidewalk?
Right.
And then how do we beautify the dog area itself so that it's not a patch of green turf? How do we make it so that it's again activated with the intent of the PRO and a nice pedestrian experience?
Exactly.
Okay.
With that, I'm going to suggest that we table this case.
Yeah.
With your permission.
Yep. Yeah. Give us some time to work through that.
Yeah, and work with staff.
Yeah. We'll do that this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Great. All right. Thanks everyone for the time, for the comments.
All right, so with the permission of the owner, I will entertain a motion to table.
A second.
Councilman.
A second.
No, you have
We
to
need to-
make
yeah.
a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right.
Yeah, so,
Oh,
all right.
I thought.
Go ahead,
it was-
make
First.
Councilwoman Gray.
Oh.
You move to
I
table.
move to table.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. Oh.
Mr. Sandberg?
Correct. Yep.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just have some maybe
Okay.
just additional sort of thoughts maybe
Yeah.
as, so I think Ms. Anderson made a comment about the landscape materials and thinking about the plants on a year-round basis.
Mhm.
So maybe one thing to consider too is looking at things that will be evergreen, looking at things that might help to, mask the institutional lookingness
Sure.
of
Yeah.
of the fence today.
Mhm.
And I think one of the other, my reaction I think is more to the fence than it is to anything else. So what I might also request is you take a look at providing additional landscape buffer around the parking lot side and the sidewalk side, drive side of that fence, instead of it being right up against the curb. Is there the opportunity to look at bringing it in slightly so that you're able to landscape around that?
We can look at it. I think that, just thinking through cost of doing something like that, that's kind of why we're leaning towards adding, right? So let's add around where we can, and definitely point taken on the landscaping.
Well, if I can also make
Yeah.
a comment to that. This was installed without.
For sure. Yeah.
Without permission.
Point
So I
taken,
think
absolutely.
that cost, while is a consideration, shouldn't be the driver of how we move forward.
Sure. Point taken.
Thanks.
Okay. Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Hearing none. Dan, please.
All right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Director Wong had to step out at 10 o'clock, so Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sandberg, Mr. Trassick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Mr. Strickland.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion to table passes unanimously. So,
Thanks.
yeah, we'll link up and
Yeah, we'll probably go through local again just to, because it is a pretty extensive redesign. So let's go through local again and then work our way back up
yeah,
here.
if
That's
that's
fine.
okay with the commission,
Okay.
yeah.
Great. All right. Thanks everyone for the time.
All right, thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Ostrowski.
All right, we'll move on to the next case number 24026. Franklin, West Clinton Historic District, 6114 West Clinton, addition or renovation. Is the applicant here virtually?
Yes, I'm online. How you doing?
Go ahead. All right, please introduce yourself and tell us about your project.
Yes, Bernard Chambers, principal of Goliath Holding Group. And this is a property that we purchased in the area and just basically going to do a renovation to the home with new siding, windows, all new mechanicals on the inside, and just put an 15 by 20 addition across the back of the house and a small front side addition as well to add a 2-story foyer into the home.
Okay. Just as you want your slides advanced, just let the staff know and they'll go through the presentation.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so if you look at the front here where the porch is at, walking to the side of the house, that is now gonna be an addition coming on to enclose that and expand the front of the house over a little bit more so that the upstairs can now become a primary suite and have a walk-in closet and a walk-in bathroom. And the downstairs will also, like I say, have a foyer area. You can go to the next slide. So the side elevation right there, it's not going to change. That the conforming of the house is still going to stay the same with that side elevation. It's just going to be, the addition is just going to be exactly where the porch is at on the straight part, coming back to where that gutter line is at. You can go to the next slide. And then in the back of the house, the addition will start right where that porch is at, spanning across the entire back of the house, which is about 20 feet, and it will be 15 feet deep off of the home. And it's a 1-story addition.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing else is going to happen on the exterior other than just changing the entire house with vinyl siding, roof, windows, gutters, and those sorts of things. And go ahead.
You don't have any, do you have, okay, so you have drawings of the proposed additions?
Yes.
Do you want us to walk us through these drawings?
Yeah, so on the front here of the house, I have it to where it's we're removing the vinyl porch and putting a nice maple railing with a wrought iron spindles going across the porch. Those posts will be nice wooden posts as well to mimic the railing. And also on the front of the house, I have new board and batten vertical siding going up the front portion of the house at the top of the A, where you see that roof vent gable will be a shake siding as well to just give the house more of an accent and a different elevation look on the front of the home. The windows will be black, and it will be a new wooden front door on the front of the house as well.
Okay.
And those are just some of the specs of the materials that are being used on the home as far as the board and batten and the siding, just showing the energy quality and efficiency rating that will be put on the home. And then that's the garage that's going to be built as well. It's already a one-car garage there. However, that's going to be expanded to become a two-car garage in the back of the house.
Okay. All right. So thank you for that presentation. We'll move on for design review recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This project was reviewed by the Historic West Cleveland Design Review Advisory Committee. They saw it first on January 17th and tabled the project. There was a lot of discussion about it. They tabled to allow time for the study of the original character, defining details and decorative elements, study stepping back the front addition a few feet, look to neighboring properties, profiles and cues for the trim and accents, more color in the gable, and to retain or replace the front vinyl siding or do alternatives to vinyl. The home is existing, the 7-inch profile siding and the garage. In that case, there was a lot of discussion. What was approved showed drawings that showed all horizontal siding on the front, and then it was discussed the vertical siding, and so they wanted to keep it with the horizontal siding. And the front addition was moved out closer, and so when the project returned on March 20th, they came with a front addition that was set back slightly, so it's a little bit of deference to the kind of bay in the front. And so there was more discussion on the siding that was proposed. They wanted more information on the roofing. They stated the vertical siding is not appropriate and recommended that visual change be done with colors or a horizontal band board. And that the railing height is kind of one of those, the historic districts are allowed a lower railing height than code. So there does sometimes become a discussion with inspectors on what's allowed for a railing height. But the committee ultimately approved with conditions to use horizontal siding instead of vertical, and a recommendation for final colors in the new addition to match the main house, and to work with staff on the porch and front facade details and railing height. They also stated that roofing shingle material and other material information should be submitted to staff with final colors. And that kind of addition color in the proposed drawings, it shows the addition in the front the same color as the bump out in that vertical siding. So they suggested that be the same color as the rest of the house to not stand out as much as that front bay.
Okay, thank you. And staff recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ultimately, the staff, agrees with the Design Review Advisory Committee. We feel that the vertical board and batten proposed siding is not appropriate. We'd like to see something horizontal. Understand the desire to kind of, highlight different elements of the architecture of the house. The gable seems like the most appropriate space for that. But a treatment up there, something like shake or fish scale would be more appropriate than board and batten. Also, the 7-inch proposed siding is a bit tall given the period that this house was originally constructed. So we'd recommend going to, a double 4 or something like that. I mean, as always, we prefer to see higher quality materials on the front of the house. We're looking at vinyl windows, but this house has already been vinylized. So you can see here back in 2005, it's got vinyl siding, vinyl windows. The porch is wrapped in vinyl. We're more than happy to work with the applicant on an appropriate porch plan. As Jessica mentioned, the height of the railing is always important to us. It looks like it's at a reasonable height here. We want to ensure that a replacement stay at that height and doesn't get any taller. I don't feel that the proposed wrought iron is necessarily appropriate, but probably a wood spindle or something. Again, staff is happy to work with those details, work out those details with the applicant. Ultimately, we have no issues with the proposed additions, so it's pretty much the style of vinyl, where that goes, how that's applied, and yeah, I think a lot can be done with color as opposed to changing the style of the siding. So staff, yeah, ultimately agrees with the local design review committee.
And did they vote on the project? Design review?
Oh, yes, they voted to approve with conditions.
With conditions,
Mhm.
yeah. All right, with that, we'll open it up for commission comments and questions. Okay, still open.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to thank the applicant for bringing this to us today. I don't have any issues with the rear addition, the garage, and such, and I agree with staff and local review recommendations regarding the not doing the vertical siding. I think horizontal or something else like the sort of the scalloped design that is currently sort of shown out, that's currently included in the house, I think is more appropriate for the time period. Even though the house is fully vinyl today, I think we would make the requirement that the front elevation be cement composite board like a hardy board and not vinyl. Same thing with the front windows, recommending that those are not vinyl, that those are a material that's not vinyl. I do have an issue with the addition on the front of the house, primarily the second floor addition. I think that the second floor piece changes the character of the house pretty significantly from what it looks like today. I don't have an issue with the first floor extending or creating an entry vestibule. I think there's plenty of examples around the historic district or around the neighborhood where there is an extended sort of vestibule underneath the sort of porch roof. But you see that mass steps back to the main body of the house as it moves up to the second floor. So I would like to see the sort of the primary bedroom at the front of the house reconfigured in such a way that the walk-in closet be relocated somewhere else within the floor plan, so that it doesn't create that that new addition on that upper portion.
All right,
Where do you think that it can be reconfigured at in the given this layout that the house have now? That's the whole reason for adding the addition, to create that master bedroom closet. There is no space in that room. If you look at the drawings carefully, you can see that the room is very small. So adding the whole purpose of adding that addition is to give you more square footage of the home, for one, and two, to add that closet space, which allows you to now walk into the back part of the closet, which is the primary bathroom. So with that space not being there up top, there is no master bathroom or any of that stuff. This whole plan is null and void. It's not able to be created. So, it would look even worse having that addition on the first floor, but not continuing up to the second floor. It doesn't really make any sense to do that at all.
One thing maybe to consider is, instead of the primary bedroom being in the front, maybe relocating the primary bedroom to the rear. You're doing a lot of work on this property, and I want to commend you for making the investment. But again, this is an historic district, and there's requirements that we want to make sure that any development that's happening within the district is sensitive to the historic context, and especially when we're looking at historic homes with a level of character, that we try to maintain that as much as possible. So typically we don't see any issues with rear additions because it's not sort of the primary facade that fronts on the street. So it's not for this body to make recommendations related to sort of planning within the structures themselves. I think that there could be potential ways of incorporating, a closet into the floor plan. It might mean that the bedroom in the middle, gets a little bit smaller or something like that. And then access to the what's called the master bath could be from, the side if that space was reconfigured. But again, I would disagree that the addition on the first floor to create the vestibule doesn't make sense, because I think that there are plenty of examples within the neighborhood where there is an extended sort of vestibule on the first floor level. But again, that volume does not translate up to the second floor.
Have you had adequate time to review the drawings of this home? Because if you look at the middle bedroom, it's already 9 by 11. The hallway, it's on the right side of it. So there's no way to make that room any more smaller. At that point, you might as well not even have it a room. It's already inadequate space in the bedrooms in the homes already. If you look at the drawings, the bedroom in the back of the house is 12 by 8. The bedroom in the middle is 9 by 11. The bedroom up front, which is going to be the primary bedroom, is 13 by 8. Taking out any more space of any of these rooms would be very detrimental to this. I would, at that point, I would probably just sell the house. I would not continue on with doing anything to the house if I have to continue to compromise the integrity of the home, my design, or anything that it is that I wanted to do with this house. Because everything that I'm doing that's adding value, that's adding more character, that's adding anything to this neighborhood, to this street, it's just being torn apart. It doesn't make any sense to put vinyl windows in the house, but a different material in the front. No one's never going to know the difference from a vinyl window to a wooden window. If you're looking at it from the outside, it's going to have casing on it. The only person that's going to know is on the inside. And the energy level is going to be the same. So, when I bought this house, it wasn't, oh, you have to put wood composite or you have to put cement composite. That's almost 100% increase of my budget, going from vinyl to cement siding on the front. It serves no purpose. You're going to get the same look, you're going to get the same material benefits, and you're going to get, honestly, longevity with having the type of material that I'm using on this house compared to putting a fiber cement on the front where they have to maintain it on a yearly basis. So I'm not understanding what the emphasis of trying to continue on a look, when a lot of times some of the people can't even continue on the maintenance of this look that you guys are trying to uphold.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Anderson, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This home happens to sit in a historic district, so the Secretary of Interior standards apply here. And that's what our duty is, to uphold those standards. So I'm in agreement with the comments of the local design review committee, and I'm in agreement with my fellow commissioner. And I don't think the second floor addition on the front is appropriate. The back, yes, but is fine. But the front is, that is facing the street, and that is something that's, I think, going to alter the house to its detriment. The board mat and siding is not appropriate. A horizontal siding with a lap that's, you know, properly spaced, that's consistent with a home of this age would be more appropriate. You know, frankly, I think in the comments from the local design review committee, they mentioned that once you remove the vinyl that's there, you might be able to get some clues into what was originally the configuration of the wood siding, and that could give you some idea of how to approach the restoration of this home. But this is in a historic district, so these standards do apply. And those are, oh, one more comment. The colors, the exterior colors, should be within the palette of an appropriate historic color chart. You know, they're available through Sherwin-Williams. I know there's books on these things, so that's something to study and incorporate those color choices. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Any other commission? Mr. Sandberg.
Hey, thank you. I just wanted to, I guess, reiterate what's already been said. I do support what the neighborhood design review has made comments towards, as well as what my colleague Mr. Lozier said. I do not support the second floor addition. I think that it changes the look of the roof significantly, and I think what he was getting at, and maybe it would be beneficial for the applicant to look at, is instead of a second floor addition on the front, maybe a second floor addition on the rear. I would support a full second floor back there, moving your master into that, sorry, into the second floor addition on the rear. You could significantly increase the amount of square footage in that master bedroom. And I think that's kind of what you're going for. And then I had a question, is this going to be your house, or is this going to be something you're renting out?
No, this is not going to be my house. I am a professional builder and developer. This is what I do for a living. You know, I hear all of you guys' recommendations where, you know, putting an addition on the back and, you know, changing this and changing that, but that again drastically changes what the budget is for this project. That drastically changes what the ROI is for this project. So, you know, when people buy homes in this area, there should be some sort of documentation or a handbook or something to where they understand, you know, what you can do and what you can't do, or any of this stuff. Like, I don't feel like it's fair at all for someone to just buy a house and just have to automatically know what they can and can't do on a certain street. And then, you know, go through the whole process of spending money on drawings and everything else just to have them ultimately be changed multiple times. Like I've already went through what I assumed was the historical design team when I met with Jessica Beam and other associates, and they had me make adjustments to that front addition, and I did that for them. We just had a meeting last week. They said that everything looks good. It's no problem. Now I'm in front of another group of people who's telling me that same thing that they had me change that they then approved is not good. So I just don't see how any of this helps anybody, because no one's on the same page, because there's no clear guidelines on what should and shouldn't be done. You know, these are all of a matter of an opinion. These aren't oh, you can't do this because it's not structurally sound, or you can't do this because of a hazard or something like that. These are all of a matter of opinion to continue to uphold a look when, and in my opinion, it's not affecting the look because all the slants in the house is still there. Everything is still there. You can ride down that street today and you can see a million different roof lines. No roof line on the house is the same. So it's going to be multiple different roof lines. The front of the houses are going to be different widths on a lot of them. You know, so it doesn't seem very fair at all for people to have a matter of opinion and a personal opinion based off of a business decision or a decision from a building standpoint.
Let me just
Because again,
interrupt
if you
you there.
look at
Let
these
me
things,
just,
it's-
let me interrupt you there. We understand where you're going with this, but these are not just individual opinions that we're expressing. This home is within a historic district, and it's incumbent upon the seller to identify that the house is within a historic district. It's typically incumbent upon the realtors representing the buyer and the seller to advise both the buyer and the seller that the home is within a historic district. And then the Landmarks Commission, by ordinance, has to enforce standards that are consistent across historic districts throughout the city. And we reference the Secretary of the Interior standards when formulating an opinion in terms of proposed renovations are consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards that we are charged to follow. So these are not just random individual opinions. They're based on standards that we're obligated to enforce. So it's important that, when buying property, that you understand the conditions associated with that particular property. And that's
Yeah,
what,
no, I appreciate that. But yeah, I guess the seller and the agents feel my people then, because again, that was it was never noted. It wasn't noted on the listing. I didn't find out about this until I actually submitted my drawings to the building department, and they told me I needed to go to down the hall to Landmark and submit this plan or whatnot. So, I think it would be good again for it to know as far as like, maybe provide some type of documentation or literature or whatever with whoever's buying houses in these areas so that they know, at least have a list of standards in front of them at the time of closing so that they understand what it is that, they're getting involved with.
right. Yeah, so there was obviously a miscommunication with regard to where this house sits and the standards that apply. Mr. Sandberry, do you have additional comments?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Dr. Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that I understand exactly what's been said today, because it is my understanding at this point that both the Design Review Committee and the staff agree that this is a worthwhile investment, that these renovations and these additions are appropriate, with the exception of the two-story foyer. Is that what we're calling the change to the front of the home? That that and the vertical siding, those were the only two major changes that were being suggested, but that the project itself is important. And I just want to make sure that's what I believe I heard, because I would agree with them, both the Design Review Committee and the staff, that this is a wonderful project. It seems to me, and again, I'm not a developer, neither am I an architect, but it seems to me that all of the bedrooms are small, and that there could be a very nice small bedroom, again, coming from someone who is not an architect or a developer, in the rear of the home. And I would just hate to see this project abandoned because there's some kind of miscommunication and that people are walking away from this discussion believing that we're opposed to the project. I don't think that's what the Landmarks Commission members are saying, but just with some recommendations related to the railing on the porch and related also to the direction of the siding. Those are the main changes, but that other suggestion or that other requirement or strong recommendation that the owner consider looking at the rear bedroom and then making the walk-in closet and maybe increasing the square footage of that bedroom, that would be something that would be acceptable for the members of the Landmarks Commission. Now, did I hear that correctly? That those are the major concerns?
I just want one point of clarification with regard to the Design Review Committee's recommendation. Did they object to the second floor addition?
When it was first proposed, it was pretty much blocked the front bay windows, and so they objected with how forward that addition was, and so it was pushed, discussed to push it back about 2 feet to not stand out as much from that front bay.
So what's presented here today
That is
essentially was approved.
reduced in size, yes.
It was approved by the Design Review Committee.
So originally, yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Came all the
really
way to
the
the front.
siding and the height of the railing is what they were recommending.
Yeah, and in our last meeting, I already told them that I didn't mind changing from vertical to horizontal. That wasn't a big deal for me. You know, I was going to change that regardless. And Jessica said that she was going to just, check on the height of the railing, because I was telling her, code is 36, and then she said, for the historical area, it can be as low as 32. And I said, as long as it's okay, then I'm okay with that. So, those were just small cosmetic things that I didn't mind changing. That wasn't a big deal for me. And after our meeting we had last week, Jessica did email me and say that, for the historical, it was 32 to 34 height. And I'm again totally fine with that. That doesn't make or break my project. But
Before we move on to Ms. Anderson, I just want to make the point that there's several commission members that make up this body, and we all are individually charged with making our own assessment in terms of the proper application of the Secretary of the Interior standards. And so you're going to hear different opinions from different commission members as to the acceptability of the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness for this proposed project. So the opinion of various commission members that have been expressed so far just represents the individual commission member's opinion. You won't know the actual outcome until a vote is taken in total. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Point taken from the applicant. I think people buy these houses not knowing that the home is in a historic. Often find sellers know that their home is in a historic district. And there's 6,000 real estate agents that work in this area, and they're not up to speed on this stuff. I'm not quite sure how to get the word out to people. There is a mechanism that's already in place. When a home is purchased in the city of Cleveland, there's a city of Cleveland disclosure form that has to be submitted. And there is a box on that form that's checked off that, should say whether or not property is in the historic district. I have found situations where the city has not checked that appropriate box on properties in historic districts. So, I'm not quite sure how to remedy this. This area does have some historic markers, but there probably there needs to be more awareness and education on this out there in the community, especially in these areas that are subject to this kind of review.
Right. I agree completely. But
Yeah, one last thing, if you don't mind. I think that's very accurate, and I think another thing that's kind of throwing me off is that I purchased another home on West 58th, 1378 West 58th, which is like 2 minutes away walking from 6114. And I bought it the month before I bought this one, and it wasn't, in the historical district. So me personally, I would never think that, you walk 2 minutes across the street and now you got a whole different set of ball game.
yeah, that's the case. One's in a historic district and one isn't. I'm going to express my opinion now. I personally, so we take every application on a case-by-case basis, and we have to use our own best judgment in terms of respecting the position of the applicant and the proper application of the Secretary of the Interior standards. I think you've taken input from the Design Review Committee and from the Landmark staff. I personally think that both first and second floor additions are sufficiently integrated into the original design so that they somewhat complement the original design and do not adversely affect the historical presentation of the home on the street. So, and this house previously had vinyl siding. It has vinyl siding, it has vinyl windows. And so the applicant's intent to upgrade those features with similar materials, in this particular case, I don't have a problem with. So based on the recommendation of the Design Review Committee and the staff, I can support this application with the recommendation of changing the vertical siding to horizontal and lowering the height of the handrail. That's my opinion. Carl?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just additionally, Ms. Anderson mentioned the certificate of disclosure, and it should be, staff has been working with the Building and Housing Department about making sure that that is done correctly. And I would wonder if this certificate of disclosure specifically has that box checked. We did not look at that, which could have been an oversight, don't know. However, this particular historic district still has an active web page with all the requirements listed and links and stuff like that. So, and there are the signs up. So there is information out there. Are we trying to upgrade our website and do all that? Yes, that you've seen us going through this entire design review process and everything we are doing, and we're actively doing that. But
certainly
to the applicant's point, yes, 2-minute walk, you're not in the district anymore, but that's because this is not contributing to that district. So yes.
Right.
Thank you.
So we've seen it before, and we'll continue to actively work to get information out there so that the home sellers, home buyers are not surprised by the requirements that are meant to be to the benefit of the owners of the property and to the district as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So various opinions have been expressed. I don't have a hole in my head in terms of where we sit, but I will entertain any motion that's put forth with regard to this particular application.
Mr. Sandberg.
Mr. Sandberg, you.
I think it's just still
No.
up, but
Sorry, I didn't take that down.
All right. So our options are a motion to approve and a motion to deny or to table. Would any of the commission members like to make a motion? I think it's incumbent upon us to make a motion. We've had a presentation from an applicant for consideration of his certificate of appropriateness. We've heard the testimony.
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to approve as presented with the conditions that the second floor addition be removed, the vertical board and batten siding be changed to horizontal, or upon further investigation of what's underneath the existing vinyl siding, to inform the materiality or the design of the renovation. Also a condition to look at the railing, both the height and the design of the wrought iron spindles. One thing that we didn't talk about, but I also want to address is that all of the trim at the porch be painted versus being left natural. Also, with the condition that the front elevation be changed from vinyl siding to cement composite board siding and upgraded window materials on the front facade, which is consistent with the recommendations and requirements that we ask all of our applicants to abide by in historic district.
Have all those conditions noted.
I think.
So we have a motion to approve with significant conditions. Do we have a second on that motion?
This is Alan, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? I personally am not in favor of this motion. I'm going to vote against this motion because I think that the conditions applied are so significant that it is effectively a rejection of the certificate of appropriateness. So that I would just want the commission members to know where the chair stands.
Ms. Anderson.
Ms. Anderson?
Should we table this then?
Well, we have a
Yeah,
motion and a second.
Yeah, there's a motion on
We
the
have
table.
to,
So.
we have to vote this motion up or down,
Oh,
and then the applicant will take it from there.
Mr. Chair. Go ahead, Ms. Anderson.
I was going to add that the exterior colors should be reviewed and consistent with an appropriate color palette for a historic district.
Mr. Loja, would you modify your motion to include that?
I would, yes.
And Alan on the second?
Yes.
Is there any further discussion on this motion?
Mr. Chair, just something as a clarification with the Secretary of the Interior Standards where it says that it'd be replaced in kind. There is vinyl on it, and replacing it in kind would be replacing vinyl. Now, we can hope that a future person would change it, and maybe we have something in the future to require that. But because it's already done, the materiality is vinyl, whether we like it or not.
That applies to the windows as well.
And it applies to the windows as well. Is it putting too much to make that requirement that is not there right now? If someone was going for a restoration, a full restoration, then that might be a little bit more of a thing, but right now it is in kind.
Yeah, and we're charged with following the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, not the other, there's standards for preservation, for restoration. There's different levels of standards that require different things. But to Mr. Brems's point, yes, it does refer to in kind.
Mr. Lozier?
Thank you, Mr. Runges. I would be willing to adjust my recommendation to strike the requirement or recommendation to replace with cement composite material and upgraded window material.
I think
I have a
it,
question. Where does an upgraded window material determines if it's fits for historical or not? What is the difference from upgraded window material compared to the vinyl windows that's been there since 2005 and the other numerous of homes on the street that currently is constructed with vinyl windows?
yeah, Mr.
What is-
Mr. Chambers, the motion is being modified. So the commission member that presented the motion has excluded those requirements from the motion.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so as long as Mr. Dryer approves that in a second, then those requirements would be eliminated.
Okay.
So Alan, you're okay with
Yes,
the
I'm fine.
modification? Yeah.
I'm fine with the modification.
All right, so I'm gonna ask the secretary to restate the current conditions on the motion to approve.
Make sure I was paying attention. So we have a motion to approve as presented with the condition that the second floor addition be removed and that the board and batten siding be replaced with horizontal siding or based on a material or style, thank you, based on what is found underneath, what is discovered when the current siding is removed, and that the railing height and design be examined and approved by staff, and that the trim on the porch should be painted and not left natural, and that the exterior colors be evaluated and, as appropriate to the historic district. Yes.
Okay. So we have a revised motion and a second. Any further discussion? Dan, please call roll.
All right. Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray stepped away, Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sambry,
Yes.
Mr. Trasick,
Yes.
and Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Mr. Strickland.
No.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes by a vote of 6-1.
So what happens at this point? Because I'm going to have to change my entire drawing. So it appears as if I'll have to be back in front of you guys again, because you can't just have an addition on drawings and then say all of a sudden, oh, we're going to take off the top but leave the bottom. So that means new drawings have to be done all over again, and I have to come back before the design committee, then come back
No.
before you guys.
Sir, no, at this point, you would update your drawings to reflect the motion made by the committee or the commission, and then you'd submit those to staff, either directly to staff or through Building and Housing's permit portal. And then we would review them and ensure that they, met the motion that was passed here today. So from this point on, you'll be working with staff to finalize the details moving forward. So you shouldn't have to come back before the commission or the design review committee again.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm probably just going to sell the house. It's fine.
All right, we can talk offline after the
Yeah,
meeting.
your project was approved by the
Yeah,
landlord.
but it's not. It's taking the whole. It's taking the
Right.
whole project away at the end of the day, because now the whole master is compromised. There is no master at this point because that upstairs addition allowed for that space to connect that room to the right side of the driveway house. So now you have a whole suite. When you take that upper level away, there's nothing connecting those two rooms now. So it's just, it's null and void. I can't even put a bathroom in at this point. So yeah, I'll probably just have to figure out to sell it as is. It's okay. You can send over the motion though. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much. I hope, that your project is able to go ahead successfully.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next case, 24027, Ohio City Historic District. The Malone residence at 4003 Franklin Boulevard, siding replacement.
Hi.
Hi.
I was here about a month ago.
April 22nd.
Oh, you have better dates than me. This is all a lot to take in, and they're good points by both sides, I do have to say, so. I'm here again for my home. Again, and I do have to say, there was no disclosure when I purchased a home. But I did know I was in a historic district because it's Franklin. So, okay, let's see if I got the right back and forth.
You have to push backwards to go forward. So.
Yes.
Push backwards to go. Oh, anyway, I'll start here. And I think August, my contractor, might be online here. So I'm presenting again my siding. Oops, I did it backwards.
Backwards to go forwards. There you go.
All right, so kind of a halfway map that I could do. So I am located where that little arrow is. So I'm between 38th and 44th, really right across the street from the Lutheran Ministries building. And let's see. Here's some pictures of the home kind of in the state it is right now, because we did a lot of interior renovation. And that was the time when I really learned, because we put that addition on, that it was in a historic district, but the rule, we didn't need landmarks, at that time, I guess, because it was more interior, and the design review they approved for the addition because it was on the back of the house. So anyway, staying were the windows in the roof. So I was working with those colors sequence when I hired my designer for review. So little history. House was owned by Joe Zimmerman, who built it in '96. He purchased it from his neighbors looking at the house to the left. They owned basically the whole of Franklin from that house to the corner and have sold off part, the little bed and breakfast that's there. They sold off properties one by one, and just a few years ago sold it to a young couple, the house that they were living in. Joe bought the house in '96. It was a lot. So whatever happened to the house, I could not find that. Maybe you guys found it in your records, but it was just a lot. With a lot of old stonework. Dan saw the people who visited. He reused a lot of that stonework for the backyard where the pond is. And as I excavated more for the backyard addition, we found more and more of that base stonework that the previous house had held. And we kept a lot of that and moved it in the back of the yard. So Joe built basically on an empty lot, and he built a duplex. He lived there with his wife. We rented from him first to 2019 to 22, and then we purchased because he wanted to move to Florida. He rented for us for a year, and we knew the house was basically original, everything about it, the interior, the roof, the windows, and we knew we were going to be doing a renovation. As we progressed into the renovation, because we added the addition and they changed only one window in the kitchen, all that siding just, it was irreparable. So as I was going to paint it, but then I thought, okay, let's just do the whole siding thing. And that's how I progressed to this point. The renovations began about a year ago last year. And the first floor was a guide, and then the addition was added to attach to the garage. So we didn't have to go outside all the time and go down steps. Anyway, so that's how we got to this point. I understand I'm in a historical district. That house is not historical. And there was no historical, I mean, it was there obviously, but torn down. So it's in need of exterior help. We decided to go with the hardy board. It is presently siding, but we decided to upgrade it just because a hardy board, as you guys talked about, is a more historical way to go. I decided to stay with the, you'll see pictures later, with the shakes too, because I know there's a lot of houses in the neighborhood that have shakes. I just went with the vertical just to give it a little more upgrade look. I think that's the factor here. And the design company, that's the way it was drawn. We chose alabaster because that's what matched with the windows and the roofing. And then reducing some of the cost, I'd originally drawn it in all hardy board, but that's astronomical to do that, mostly because on the side of the house, you'll see it's very long. And to use hardy board, you have to make cuts. And that just adds to the price. So in the end, I said, let's go the vinyl. And we decided to do horizontal. By doing horizontal so long, because the house is very long with the garage, that is why the design team did hardy board around to the sides where the fireplace is, staying vertical, and then horizontal to break it up a little bit. And then the fireplaces being the shakes to carry through the peaks. So the trim and the soffits would be the darker brown color. And I think that was one of the questions before. Visiting the house, you could see the depth better. And there's a little roof section on the front. Let me see if I can. That really is not that brown up there. You know what I mean? It just looks like that because the roof sits above the bay. So that's the roof color. And then you have the trim and, you know, those peaks are all brown. But it's not as much brown as it looks like from this photo. There's a view of the side of the house. Now that stone was drawn in just because it's the design team. Right now it's stucco, kind of beige. And that's what it's gonna stay because the vertical, I don't have elevations and all that, but actually the vertical siding comes down a little further than that. This was just drawn in their vision. There's a picture of the addition and there are some shakes on the around the window. And then there will be either whatever stonework or brickwork that I decide to put on that bottom portion. That hasn't been decided. I'm just working on the siding right now. So this is kind of what it will look like with the turn, with the vertical there, the shakes, and the horizontal. Here's old house, presently what it looks like. And I'd like to, when you look at this house, because of the oval windows, it still helps give it that little more, you know, colonial, traditional look. The front porch, I had them draw in as a screened porch just in case I wanted to do that because there are a lot of gnats in the, you know, that come in. I'd like to sit out front. This picture doesn't show the bottom picture, but the top, we kept the wrought iron fencing, which is historical. And I feel like it adds to keeping the nature of the, you know, scope of the plan in with the neighborhood. So I'm not changing any structural things. Everything is just exterior. A couple points. Not changing any structural. I'm keeping the iron gate and a lot of the stone boulders in the back of the yard. Just the vertical siding was ordered back in December because it takes, that hardy board takes months to get in. And when you're picking a color, so we thought we were, being proactive without approval, not thinking it was going to be a problem. And so it's sitting in the warehouse. So any change we make, there's cost. The other thing is I have a different contractor who did the addition. He's at a stalling point because he can't get his final approval until the addition siding is done. So I have no gutters on the back of that house. I have, it's just open to the elements right now. So I'd like to get this passed so I can progress. Anyway, thank you so much.
Okay. Did this go back to design review?
Mr. Chairman, no, it did not. Since it's essentially, the same proposal as last time we saw it, we didn't think it needed to go back to the design review committee. They did see it back at the beginning of the year, as was reported last time. And
Memory in terms of their
yeah,
disposition on the project.
They voted to deny it. They thought that it needed more simplification. They thought that the board and batten, the shake, and the there's just too much going on. They wanted to see it simplified. But it was essentially denied, and then it came here and was ultimately denied at the commission. So we're looking at this as a new case now, with a much clearer presentation. And we did in the meantime go out and do a site visit with Ms. Malone and
So has the staff revised your recommendation on this project?
well, Carl is going to give our staff report, and then I guess if there are other comments that come up, so be it. Oh, yes, yeah, timeline would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, product timeline. So a permit application was received by our office November 15th, 2023. They were scheduled for the Ohio State Design Review Committee on December 21st, but did not show, and so they were rescheduled for February 1st, 2024, tabled, as Dan noted, and then scheduled to return February 15th, which at that point they were denied, and then scheduled after that for Landmarks Commission on February 22nd, and then there was a motion to approve that failed as a tie vote with 3 for, 3 against, and 2 abstentions.
So I'd like to make one comment. I did not know there was an issue. A contractor did not inform me at December 21st. I assumed he came. I was not informed of the problem until a few days before the February 22nd meeting. So that's when I stepped in and
So staff has had a long and healthy discussion about this project. And while we don't have 100% agreement, we felt it'd be better to speak to the whole thing, look at all the sides, put everything out there, much like we just discussed in the previous one. We took all sides, listened to everything, and then leave it up to the commission to make their decision. Individually, this is a newer home, so it falls outside of the period of significance, and therefore it would not be considered a contributing structure to the district. There are cases in which this project might be allowed because there's more latitude to a non-contributing structure in applying more non-traditional treatment. This house was designed most likely in conjunction with the former Housing Design Review Subcommittee and built prior to this portion of Franklin Boulevard being part of the historic district. Because of that guidance, it was designed sensitively to its immediate context, even with the modern materials like the vinyl. Had this been a proposal to change vinyl siding in kind and doing all that, it's most likely an administrative approval. Even though it is not a contributing building, it still needs to work with the rest of the context. Historic districts are like symphonies. There are lead structures and secondary structures. Newer construction needs to be subordinate to and harmonize with this district as a whole. If they're surrounded a back alley or not so prominent of a position, this may be a different conversation. However, due to its location on Franklin Boulevard, more care needs to be taken when making potential changes. Franklin Boulevard was basically the Euclid Avenue of the West Side, and many prominent citizens lived here and used, you can see in the designs that are along this And not just in Ohio City, it goes all the way down. Board and batten siding is an inappropriate material, or is an appropriate material on secondary structures or on main structures in rural areas. Mainly, you see this in farmhouses, but mostly occurs during the Gothic Revival era. So it was during that 1850s to 1880s type of style. Franklin Boulevard, the homes were mostly being built after the heyday of the Gothic Revival era. So most likely we're not seeing this in use in this context on this street and at the tail end of that era. The house in question is a secondary non-contributing structure within the boundaries of the historic district, and it needs to be subordinate and complementary. This proposal adds conjectural features that likely did not occur in this part of Ohio City during this time period. And although it's a modern building, it shows a good example of one that conforms to its environment, fades in, and doesn't compete, even being right up on Franklin Boulevard. So what's before the commission today is to determine how are we treating this building. It is not contributing, and it's not new. It falls somewhere in between. You're at a 30-year period now. So, but in either case, it still needs to be appropriate to the context of Franklin Boulevard within the historic district. Thank you. We're not going to give an opinion one way or the other. We want to add all that scale.
Yeah. Essentially comes down
For us
to
to
do
consider.
you treat it as new construction or treat it as historic? It's, yeah, because the commission has approved board and batten on new builds, new constructions. This isn't exactly a new construction, but it's not exactly historic, so you guys have fun and enjoy the conversation.
All right, so I'll open it up for comments and questions from the commission.
I have just one quick sort of clarification. So I know last time we talked about things outside of just the siding, because the sort of the rendering showed different materials and things like that. Is the intent of this conversation only to look at the siding portion of this house and not the base material?
Base.
Just just a point of clarification, when she was talking about the base on the side, that's no longer in the scope of work. That
Right.
was a previous proposal. The siding that you see in the image here, it goes all the way, down to a normal height.
Right.
When they were talking about putting board and batten on the side of the house, they had raised that level to allow two pieces of
Gotcha.
board and batten to fit. So that's off the table now. It's parged cinder block, I assume, on the side, and it'll remain that way.
Stucco.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And then the front has a masonry veneer on it of brick.
Right, so I think that's the clarification. Are we looking at, because it looks like as part of the as part of the visuals that on the front of the house, it's going to sort of a stacked stone. So I just want to make just a point of clarification. We're only looking at the siding and not the brick veneer that's below? Or are we looking at the brick veneer that's below changing to a different material?
So
Yeah.
that bay, because you see that space underneath the bay window area, that the hardy will be carried down to the basically to the ground area. You know what I mean? Because that elevation right there is really weird. Like when you're there in person, so it looks empty. So when he does the hardy, that will be carried down. So you really is not a lot of brick left right there. You know
You're
what I
gonna
mean?
cover that brick.
Right,
It'll be
right,
a
like
hardy skirt that
the
follows the
hardy,
bay.
it's like a skirt,
Oh, so, okay, gotcha.
So like the
You're
picture shows.
you're continuing the form of that bay
Yes.
all the way
Yeah,
down to the ground.
exactly, to give it a more,
Okay.
Victorian, it really does give it more of a dimension.
But then the on the sides of that protruding bay where there's still brick, are you proposing to replace that with stack stone or to leave it as is at the moment?
I may just paint it, you know what I mean, to blend it all in. Those steps are broken up and a hazard basically. So if I go brick or cement.
Mhm.
I just haven't investigated that.
Yep.
What to do, so it could match it,
Okay.
you know what I mean? I just haven't.
Gotcha.
done
So
that.
Staff can work with
Okay.
any step material.
Yeah, no,
and
I think
that
that's,
sort
no, I think, I just wanted to make sure that I understand what we're looking at. So it's, we're really looking at the
Just
siding.
the side.
You'll work with staff on, or if there's
Mhm.
a fundamental change in whatever the materiality is, that would warrant it coming back to landmarks, we will review that at that time.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And Councilman was here last time, so we know
Right.
where he stands. Did this go before Block Club?
I don't,
No.
I don't
No.
think it
believe
has,
so.
yeah.
I just wondered if, any
No,
neighbors
I didn't. either.
beyond the councilman had weighed in on the
Oh,
proposal.
yeah, I mean, I'm friends with the neighbor, she didn't have a problem with that, who previously owned the house, but
Right.
they bought the house from him.
Yeah. I was just
But no,
curious.
I didn't, I'll probably be back again because of the fencing area. I mean,
Any
there's
beside-
multiple, yeah.
Yeah.
There's multiple things going on.
Any other additional comments? Mr. Lozier?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So fundamentally, I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with the vinyl siding on the balance of the house. I'm still, I understand the full context of the board and batten on the front, and I'm still I'd like to hear my other commission members, their thoughts on this before I make a final determination on that. I don't have a problem with the shake material on the front facade in the peaks. I'm still undecided on whether or not it seems appropriate to me on the chimneys, or if it just wants to be the sort of replaced with the horizontal in kind. I'd like to hear my other commission members' reactions to that. So that's kind of where I stand relative to the materiality. So I'm looking to hear a little bit more feedback from my fellow commission members. On the design of the porch, the sort of the new porch, is the intent that it looks like you're wrapping the existing
No.
columns with,
Probably, those posts are there. I mean,
Yeah.
I will probably keep the posts.
Okay.
And I may change up because the railings rotted too.
Right.
I mean, so I need to change that.
Mm-hmm.
Or I eliminate them, but I think it's 4 feet. What, do you need a railing if you have 4 feet?
No, it's less than that.
Less than
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
So I probably need some sort
Mhm.
of railing. And so I don't need to do, if you're trying to keep the design, I don't need to do those extra angled posts, that just modernize it. That was just drawn in as ideas, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, basically, if I decide to do the screen and porch, it will factor into what happens with
Yeah,
it.
I guess my question is, so it looks like in the rendering, in the drawing, that it's changing from white as we see it today to a brown color. Is the
Right,
intent that the brown
because-
color is
no,
paint?
That porch presently has an acacia wood
Mhm.
flooring.
Mhm.
And the roofing will be painted because it's
To
Sunday.
match
To match
the
that. And so I
flooring?
was keeping the posts in that color.
Okay, gotcha. So
It
so
could be a
so
timber
it's
check, wrap.
okay.
or
So
I
it's painted. So in this, the intent is that it's painted and not, let's say, natural wood.
Right, or I could wrap it in the timber track. You know what I mean? Which is the pecan.
Yeah,
to match.
I would say that it would be more fitting if it was a painted material.
Right.
So if you did want to make them a little bit larger, a little bit beefier,
In the
I would say, that I wouldn't have a problem with that, but I would say that have that painted rather than to match,
Right.
the material,
Yeah.
than have it actually be the timber tech material. But other than that, I'm interested to hear what my fellow commission members.
So looking at the before and after, I'm still curious about the what appears to be a significantly larger rake material in that gable in the dark color as opposed to what's shown there. Those are the same size, it's just
Mhm.
reads differently because of the
It's-
colors?
It looks like, Dan maybe can explain it. You need the angle of that one. Let's see if I can grab it. Right there.
Yeah.
So
It's-
do you see how it's more set up, the soffit, the trim, and then the soffit? And then you see the roof on the peak, the little peak, and then there's a little roof section right above the
Right.
bay. Well, in that photo, you're getting all that brown in one, and you can't really see the dimensions of the peaks.
Yeah, in the reality, there's a lot more depth than is appearing, so you're seeing the barge board or rake board, and then the soffit, and then the trim on the facade. So you're kind of seeing three different planes at
And
play here that
reading
blend
one
into
by
one.
one.
And the brown color being proposed, I don't know if you have it here,
I do.
Jeannie, but it's much lighter than, this looks like a
Right.
anodized bronze kind of color, but it's actually much lighter than that. So I think
Right,
it feels heavier here than it
Wow.
will in person.
right, so this is the hardy board, this is the siding, and even though this is alabaster and that's natural linen, closest color we could get, and it's very minimal. So you're not, you're driving by, you're walking by, you're hardly gonna notice.
And they don't
That
abut
difference,
anywhere, because,
Any other commission members commenting
that's
on this application? All right, my comments, I consider this a new house. It was built in 96, but it's a new house. It doesn't contribute to the historical fabric. I really appreciate the fact that the applicant has retained, the wrought iron fencing and the historic stone features in the front. And so given your particular circumstance, I would be able to support the vertical batt siding application. And I think the shake shingles on the chimneys are an improvement over the horizontal vinyl siding that's there presently. So that's my opinion. Any further comments?
Sanderson has her hand up.
oh yeah. Sanderson, then
Michelle?
Williams.
Is she? Go ahead, Ms. Anderson.
Mr. Chair, a couple things. The window on the second floor, in the original design, there was a framing around it, and it read more as like two double hung windows with a pretty large framing element in between. And I think that would be a preferable look in this area. And and as far as the railings go, I think we touched on this already, but the railings for the porch, the supports for the porch, they're not gonna be that double V-shaped. It's gonna be a single post the way it is now, or maintaining the posts that are there, correct?
Right, that will be, and, probably, they're staying, the posts are
not part of
staying
this
as
application.
Not
is.
part of this application.
Not part of this application.
All right.
And the windows are not changing either, that's what they are.
They'll still have that mullion between
Right.
two
Okay.
double hung windows.
Okay,
They're
so
just not right.
it's just the way the drawing is read.
Right.
I still have a problem with the board and batten satin siding. Granted that this was not contributing. When Mr. Zimmerman did this design, he was very sensitive to the area, and he really maintained the feel of the historic district. And this house really blends in seamlessly with the homes around it. And I think the white board and batten is a statement of, we're trying to look contemporary. And I really don't think that's the look that we're trying to achieve here. And I also feel that even though the product has been ordered, it's an extremely popular product. I'm sure there are contractors out there who are, attempting to reside other houses that are not in historic districts that would be grateful to buy it off of you so that they don't have to wait for it to be produced. So I don't see the hardships as being that great there. And again, I can't support the board and batten. Those are my comments.
Thank you for your comments. Just a note about the board and batten is because it was painted already, hardy board needs to be, you designate a color. And Sherwin-Williams has that contract with them, so it's been painted the alabaster already. That is the factor. So I agree that I guess maybe he could sell it, I'm not sure, with the color on it, or if they could spray over it. I don't know that information, but that's my.
Yeah, white board and batten is very popular. I see it going up everywhere.
It's alabaster, so it's not a white, but you're right, white and black is very popular right now. It's a little more creamier, so it is a special color.
Dr. Williams has her hand up.
So that,
Dr. Williams has her hand up.
Dr. Williams?
Yes, thank you. I just want to say to the applicant, and I can be brief this time, that I'm glad she returned to the meeting. I'm glad, I believe, as Carl suggested, that there was a long and healthy dialogue with staff. Happy to know, again, that there's this determination that we have an option in this instance, that this is not a historic home, even though it is in a historic district. And the clarification, I think, was an important one to share today. So thank you again for being willing to dialogue with the staff and to work with them to get us to this point where I think we can vote today. That's all I have to say.
Okay, Dr. Williams, would you like to put forth a motion?
I can try. Mr. Chair, there may be some discussion, but I believe I can move at this point that we accept the applicant's project
As presented?
as presented. Yes, I have to think about conditions. I would move that we accept the applicant's project as presented. Thank you.
So we have a motion.
Accept acting as approved as presented, just for clarification.
As approved as presented.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
Yes.
Um,
Yes,
we have a
thank you.
motion. Do we have a second? Motion on the table.
One vote up.
A second. Okay, with a failure to obtain a second, then the motion is void or
Yeah, I believe we need a new motion, one
Right.
that can get a second, so.
right. Okay, so that motion essentially failed. It didn't happen. So we'll need to entertain an alternate motion. The chair can't
Yes.
propose a motion, and it really is incumbent upon us to move forward.
I can make a motion.
All right.
I don't know if it's how it's gonna go, but I move to approve as presented. And the approval is for the vinyl siding on the sides and rear portion, the shake siding as shown, but ask the applicant to investigate whether or not the purchased siding can be resold to some other entity.
I guess you address that.
If I can finish making my motion, and alternate, and if that is able to happen, for us to come back and revisit an alternate siding material
For the front.
for the front.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second for that motion?
Anyone?
I'll second that. This is Mike Sandberg.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you, Michael.
Michael. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
All right. August, are you there?
I don't believe he's in the meeting.
Oh, he had to,
No.
maybe he had to step
He
away.
had to leave for an appointment,
All right, but you understand the condition that's applied to the motion?
Yeah.
right? And
So we have it as approving the vinyl and the shake, and then requesting that you investigate whether the siding can be sold, the hardy be sold off to another entity. If that's the case, you'd have to come back with another proposal for the front. If it's determined that you can't sell off the siding, that's something you could work with staff on. If you're kind of stuck with the siding, the hardy, then it's essentially an approval of
so
that.
this is not changing the color, this is just,
Right, yeah,
No, the
none
colors
of that
are
is in the
fine.
motion. It was like,
So-
Ms. Anderson has written it up.
Ms. Anderson? You have further discussion on the motion?
I still think it should be struck.
You're breaking up, Ms. Anderson.
It's inappropriate, and I think making it optional, I mean, you know, maybe you guys don't feel that way.
Yeah, we have you're really breaking up, so we did not get the benefit of most of your comments. You want to restate them?
You know, I think giving the applicant basically the option is, you know, I question whether an applicant can really make the due diligence to try to find a buyer for that siding. I mean, I think it's very possible, but I just have a feeling that, you know, it's that follow through isn't guaranteed the way the motion is structured right now.
We have a motion and a second. So this discussion is beneficial.
Dr. Williams' hand is up.
Dr. Williams?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, just requesting additional clarification. The motion is, and this is not a condition of the approval, right? It's just a request or a recommendation that the applicant investigate whether or not the siding can be sold as is.
Correct. That
And
is
it's
a
just the
requirement.
front. Just the front of the house, that there might be a consideration for a different material just for the front.
Right, correct.
Thank you. Just wanted to be sure that was the motion.
Sorry, can I clarify my language for the motion? So I would make it a condition that the applicant investigate and show due diligence to staff and good faith effort to try to sell the material, so that there is that level of commitment to looking to address our concerns about the rustic board and batten in the historic district.
And did Michael second that?
Not yet.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Sandberry, would you agree to that
Yes, I
modification?
agree to that.
and I just, is regarding Dr. Or I guess Ms. Anderson's comments about sort of the applicant's ability to sell construction material. The contractor's been very involved in this whole process. They've been in the meetings and at the site visit, and so I'm confident that staff can engage with them, on that end of things to document efforts made, as opposed to it being the homeowner trying to sell a bunch of hardy board on Facebook Marketplace or something.
All right. And the motion has been clarified, so it is a solid commitment on the part of the applicant. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, Dan, please call the roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sandberry, Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Mr. Trassick.
Yes.
He left and came back.
Oh, he's back.
Yeah, and then Mr. Strickland.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
So what's the next step?
I'll email you this
Work with staff.
afternoon. We'll work together and but essentially, yeah, we'll have to show.
You can put gutters in the back.
Yeah, you can gutter the back. We'll talk.
Thank you. When it's all done, I'll have you all.
All right.
Thank you.
That concludes our certificates of appropriateness. We'll move on to concept plans. Case number 24028, St. Joseph Christian Retreat House and accessory buildings, demolition of accessory buildings.
Oh, yeah, it's all
Right,
done,
and
yes.
a different case number, also
Yeah.
case number 029, proposed new construction. Would the presenter please identify themselves and tell us about it?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I'm Jennifer Arbuckle. I'm a principal at E4H Architecture. And with me today, I have Evan Champagne, who's the project manager for this project for us, and representing Hospice of the Western Reserve. So we have the two. I'm assuming you want us to go through the presentation and then we'll talk about both things, or do we do them separately? But I just want to make sure I understand how we're doing this.
Yeah, so that we can consider demolition of the auxiliary buildings. We'd like to know about what you're proposing in its place.
Mr. Chair, quickly.
Okay.
They have a second speaker on in the back, so we're getting some feedback.
Yeah, so if you could, on your end, whatever microphones you have on in the back. My comments are being fed back through the presentation.
I'm not sure.
I don't know how to solve that. I only have one microphone.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe it would be helpful when, I guess, when you're not speaking, if you could mute. It is interesting. Yeah, we don't show any other mics live, so I'm not sure where that's coming from. Sorry, technical difficulties.
Okay, we do have some construction going on in our building today, so I'm hoping they'll maybe take a lunch break right now and there won't be any extra noise. Excuse me, but I will mute when I'm not talking for sure. So you can see the project site here. The existing hospice, David Simpson Hospice House, is just north of on the plan here of the red block. And then in the red block area is the project site that we're talking about today. Obviously, Lake Erie is off to the right, and Lakeshore Boulevard bounds the site. I'm sorry, Lake Erie is on the left, and Lakeshore Boulevard is on the right of the property. If you want to go to the next slide. So we have a series of photographs of the existing conditions around the site. You can see, obviously, it's in a residential and small commercial district. It's kind of a mixed use around the current location. If you go to the next. This is the high school that's adjacent to the property. Obviously, has been there for a while. If you could go to the next slide. And you're starting to see the site for our project appearing on the left. Just obviously the edge of the high school is still on the right of this picture, but the driveway onto the property from Lakeshore Boulevard is showing on the left. If you just want to go to the next slide. We sort of have a series marching down the street. So this is right now, there is a driveway that comes onto the property adjacent to the high school and sort of loops around and comes out on the other side of the property, both exiting and entering on Lakeshore Boulevard. But you can see the property as it exists today, sort of on the left here. Next. Now this is sort of centered and the drive is sort of looping around and it's on either side of the screen. You can see this essentially, grassy open area, and then there are some trees further into the site, closer to the lake. There's some other buildings that we're talking about, and there's also some existing landscaping from previous versions of what was existing on the site. Next. This is the other driveway that I was talking about that loops around and comes back out onto Lakeshore Boulevard. And you can see on this side of the property, there is a neighborhood and there's a single family or smaller scale residential housing that bounds the whole western edge of the property. Next. And as I said before, this is sort of across the street from the property, there's a mixture of sort of small scale residential, some multifamily, and some small commercial properties around. Not any one specific style, I would say, kind of a mixture. Next. So this is a quick little summary of the landmark details as the site exists. With the exception of these auxiliary buildings that we're going to talk about, all of the buildings that were previously landmarked on the site have been gone for a while. If you want to go to the next slide. This is an older site plan, sort of showing the original layout of the buildings on the site. The auxiliary buildings that we're talking about are kind of dead center in the middle there. Excuse me, if you would want to go to the next slide. This was the building that has since been demolished. That was the original retreat house. And so you can see it's a multi-story brick and there's a big white pediment. This building, as I said, has been demolished for a while now. Next. That's just an up-close detail of what the original building looked like. Next. And this is, you can sort of see that brick building in context here with the sphere, which was the original oxygen saturation sort of tank for the facility. All of this, as I said before, has been demolished. Next. There's a few remaining sculptures and statues that exist on the property that we will probably continue to keep in the landscape there. Next. Actually, no, this has been donated, right, Bob? This has been donated to the high school next door.
Correct. In June of 2010, we moved it over to in front of the high school. It was originally in front of the St. Joseph Orphan Asylum on Woodland Avenue, and then when it moved over there when when that orphanage came over in 1944. And was housed at this site.
Next. Just another historic picture of the big oxygen tank. Next. So now we're getting to the buildings that are remaining on the campus. They are, your folks came out in January and took a look at them, and so they may have their comments to share as well. There's not a lot of, they're standing. They haven't been used for a while, and you can see there's not a lot of use still for them. This is the existing site plan as it exists right now. And those buildings are, if you look at the Lakeshore Boulevard is now on the right, Lake Erie is on the left. You can see that loop driveway that I was talking about that starts at the adjacent to the high school and loops around and comes back out on Lakeshore Boulevard. And then you can see that there is some existing driveway still on the site. And those buildings are right there sort of in the middle. And there are two of them, and they're in kind of the same level of standing, but not in use today. So if you go to the next slide. So this is our proposed site plan for the new hospice house. The intent is to reuse the existing curb cut adjacent to the high school that comes off of Lakeshore Boulevard as our new main entrance road onto the property. One of the programmatic requirements that we are trying to achieve here with the new building is that every patient room will have a view of the lake. And we talked about a 2-story versus a 1-story building. But for a lot of staff efficiency and other reasons, the client would prefer that we do a 1-story building. And so that has created this shape on the property because we're trying to make sure, again, that each room, all of the rooms are on the left side of the building facing out towards the lake, as you can see here. In addition to the main hospice building, which is sort of the top 3/4 of the building, the block in the bottom labeled Center for Community Engagement is it's used for a multitude of things. Much of it is for hospice programming, for grief counseling and bereavement counseling, but there would also be a large room in there that could be used either by the hospice house or by the local community and could be scheduled and used for all sorts of community events. So the parking lot size is governed by the minimum needed for staff and visitors for hospice house, but also for when that room, which has a maximum capacity of 100 people, might be used. And so we limited the parking to the extent that we could, but we had to make sure that we had enough to accommodate the community when they're using that space. And then as you can see, we have fire lanes that loop around the building and are connected across on the lakeside for egress from the building safely in the event of an emergency. As you come onto the property and you come down the new driveway, there would be a new sidewalk that connects from Lakeshore Boulevard all the way to the front door of the new facility. And as you come towards the building, you can see that there is a driveway that peels off a little bit, and that big square sort of on the top would be the service and loading dock area for the hospice building. It'd be screened by some landscaping so that people coming to the building aren't going to see it front and center. But the oxygen tank and the loading dock and the generator, some of the other necessary equipment needs for the building would be housed there. I think if you go to the next slide, we start to see the floor plan. Just briefly, again, the main entrance is centered in the middle of the building. We've now on this slide, the building is rotated 90 degrees from the slide you were just looking at. You can see that the building is oriented around a great room, which has views directly out to the lake, and then those patient rooms in the sort of purple color that wrap around the top of the building in sort of a W shape. On either side of the great room, we have 2 exterior courtyards. One would be intended for use by children visiting the facility, and the other just for general use. We don't have a landscape plan completed yet, but hospice on their current site has a number of gardens and other outdoor spaces, and we would be you know, reconstituting those on this ground and elaborating on those as well. So there would be garden spaces around the periphery of the building. On either side of the main entrance, on the left-hand side in the sort of beige areas, that's the administrative space. On the right-hand side, there is a cafeteria and a kitchen area. And then if you keep going past the kitchen area, that's the wing in the gray where the mechanical, electrical rooms and those utility connections into the building from that loading dock equipment yard area would be. And on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the block that's the Community Center for Community Engagement and has that large community room inside. Next. You can see the elevation. So one of the challenges of a long, low building that's a single story is trying to make sure that it maintains some character and doesn't turn into, you know, just a long hotel motel kind of feeling. And so we've been working hard to make sure that it has a lot of residential character and creating some differences in the roof lines to make sure that when you come to the building, it feels residential in nature, even though it is, you know, a building that's, you know, 40 to 44,000 square feet, plus the bereavement of the community engagement building, which is another 6,000 square feet. I probably should have mentioned that we have 32 beds. They're all private rooms. The parking lot has about 99 spaces, and right now there's about 112 staff anticipated to be running the building. So if you go to the next slide, I think we have some images of what the new building, another set of elevations. There's a lot of sides to our building. And here's the sort of rendered images, preliminary images starting to show the character of the building. Again, using residential materials and residential detailing to try and make sure that it feels like a warm and welcoming place to come to and not, you know, a very institutional space. I think there might be one more slide. Nope, we just have a little paperwork here, meaning that we have approval from the sewer district, and I'm not sure if there's one more. I think that's pretty much the presentation. Oh, and the zoning. So just briefly, let's go back. This is not ours. The city of Cleveland. So the zoning on the site is mixed. On the street side is multifamily residential. On the lake side is one family residential. That's the most restrictive. And so that is the zoning that we would be working within. And I think that's probably it. I'm happy to answer any questions. I might have missed something as we were going along here, but happy obviously to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation.
Mr. Chair, yes, this property is also connecting with a county initiative, and I think we have, so you can understand everything, not just for in the entire property. I believe we have a representative from Cuyahoga County with us to give a couple of slides just for additional context before we move on.
All right, if the county representative wants to speak on their aspects of the project.
Certainly. Hi, everyone. My name is Trevor Hunt. I am the Lakefront Project Manager for Cuyahoga County Department of Public Works. So we're working on 5 geographies countywide and one which is specific to this area. So CEO Bill Finn and Bob have been more than gracious in allowing the county to look at instilling a lakefront project, which involves public access as well as shoreline revetment along this section of shoreline. I know that within the slideshow, Carl, if you don't mind going on to the next slide, this was a plan. It's called the Lakefront Public Access Plan that was prepared by the Cuyahoga County Planning Commission, and it delves into a little greater detail within these 5 specific geographies. But you'll notice there the far eastern circle right there at the border between the city of Euclid and the city of Cleveland was called out in the Lakefront Public Access Plan. Pardon me, my phone's ringing here. So, so this is a project. It's still in its infancy, but we've received rave reviews from property owners, really extending from Neff Road all the way to East 158th Street. I'm sorry, East 185th Street. Where this project would be implemented. So we're probably several years out from making this a reality, but this, one of its sister projects, we expect to break ground probably the end of this year or beginning of next year. So that's all I got. Happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
I didn't really mention it, but there is a public access, concrete walkway pathway along the front of this property. And we, yeah, exactly, there you go. And so we, and obviously Bob can speak for the owner for sure, but we are not intending to change anything as part of this project other than, whatever Trevor's group eventually comes to as they connect on either end. So there's no, it's intended to be a public amenity and it will stay a public amenity.
That's great.
That's correct.
All right, and this went to design review?
Yes, okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. This project was reviewed by the Magnolia Wayne Park East Boulevard Grant Allotments Design Review Committee on the 21st. They saw it conceptually and were in support of the project. They liked the design. The committee discussed the lack of viable uses for the existing two buildings on the property. They discussed the height and requirement for keeping a residential feel over institutional, which the original St. Joseph Christian Life Retreat House was a very institutional feel. They did discuss and recommend memorializing the history of the site with signage or markers or landscaping or using brick pavers from the original building, just something to give a nod back to the architecture of the original building that has since been demolished, and the accessory buildings that are proposed for demolition. They also discussed looking forward to the tree preservation plan and future landscaping on this site, as well as the empty space closer to Lakeshore in the far, far future projects.
All right, thank you very much. And staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did do a site visit on January 8th. And this went to PetBot review on February 27th. They were given additional feedback, which maybe they can touch upon what they received at that point after this portion of it. I just want to give a little bit more history. They showed this map, and I'm showing the map that reaches up above as well. So we don't have an exact date as to when these two buildings were constructed, but it's at least 1912, and they predate the actual sanitarium that came later. You can see here the sanitarium in this map with the additional buildings in the back, and they had one really good one. That's a substantial building that was in the rear, which would later become where staff or support and such like that. Here, this is 1951, 52. Now the property has changed over to the St. Joseph's Life Center. It's nice to know that the statue that had been there was from St. Joseph's, which was right next to Woodland Cemetery, which that was previously St. Mary's, but then moved up here. It's interesting to see it how it all connects, and that this St. Joseph's High School is not the same one that was the St. Joseph Seminary. This is a different group in the St. Joseph Seminary, which turned into a high school, burnt down in 1946, which was just about a mile or so down the road on the Ursulines property, which is where Villa Angela comes from. And so it's all connected and makes, but you also see that the structure at the north, that was the rooms for faculty, which still stands as part of the hospice, but that's not part of this project. It's just there for how this develops over time. Current conditions here are the two. Figured out that, like I said, there's no building permits for these because back when these were originally built, it was probably not part of the city of Cleveland proper. It had not yet been annexed. But there was permits for additions in 1949, which tracks with the usage as a St. Joseph's Retreat Center and such like that. The barn is pretty interesting, actually. But you can see there's a number of salvaged items from the sanitarium before, possibly for reuse. And then the house, when we were out there, we're looking at it thinking, something doesn't just seem right about this. We hadn't looked at the building permit history or anything like this. It just doesn't look right. And so we figured it out on site before knowing that there was the addition of this brick that was put on the outside, because we can see where that second level around the windows comes in front of the sandstone sill, and then there's that little opening beneath in the brick as well. So it's like that was giving us okay, there was an addition later on. It's just a matter of finding it. I did our interior tour. This is the first floor. There are some items that might be interesting for salvage, like that front door is beautiful. Down into the basement, there's some windows that actually match some of the ones that were in the sanitarium as well. But otherwise, not a lot. It's not architecturally significant. It's been altered. There's not a lot of room. And so these buildings have lost their context. There's nothing there. We were in agreement, and we had a pre-design meeting, conceptual, and that was one of the things about how do you memorialize the history here. That was an important part, because once these two buildings are gone, everything is gone and it loses everything. So I think we had some good meetings, and they've gotten great feedback, and what they have proposed is appropriate and it's pretty understated, and we would recommend, moving on. Feedback here.
Okay.
And demolitions, I think we are okay with approving, because it lost their context and they're not viable structures.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I'll open it up for questions and comments from the commission. I guess I'll start it out. Just looking at it, this is a wonderful site. And to have it sit just vacant for all this time is, it's just wonderful to see that such a significant repurposing of this site is contemplated. And I like the design, the scale. It's a wonderful residential scale that is complementary to the site, and would certainly warrant the support of demolition of the existing structures to accommodate this new facility. Those are my comments. Any other commission members? Mr. Lotion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is also a fantastic project, and really excited that as Mr. Chair had said, that this site is being redeveloped for this particular purpose. I have maybe a couple of questions and a couple of comments. So is this facility, so it looks like, adjacent up, northeast of this property, there's the Hospice of Western Reserve building that's there. Is this meant to augment that building, or replace the functionality of that building?
It's
I can
meant to
answer
replace
that.
it. Oh, sorry, Bill. Sorry, Bob.
Okay, so, yeah. Yes, it is meant to replace it, and then we'll be looking at repurposing the other buildings on the current property. The building we're currently in is very inefficient, related to the work that we do. And we have looked and explored how do we rearrange that facility to make it more efficient, but the cost of that would be exceeding what we're going to actually use to build this new building. So that's the reason why we want to, and we also don't want to leave the neighborhood. That was a decision we made, that we are committed to this neighborhood. And so rather than relocate, we're just rebuilding.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification there. I also commend, I think, the residential scale of the feel of the building. But it is a pretty massive building on the site. And it's placed in such a way where, all of the old growth trees, it's really just sort of like in that, it's really sort of centered on that area where there is that, where there are those trees. And, while other portions of the site are less sort of have less sort of trees and foliage. So, one thing to maybe consider, I know you mentioned a tree a tree plan, but I would maybe recommend, taking a little bit more of a look at the massing of the building, or not the massing, but the footprint of the building in relation to those existing trees, and trying to maybe be more mindful and try to retain maybe more of that natural park feel. And then, also with regard to the parking, again, it's sort of a large swath of, condensed parking. Are there ways to make that feel more of a park-like setting versus, just a large parking area? So I think it's just being mindful of the context of the existing site, and really working with the features of the site as it is, and working, and allowing that building to be more integrated and part of that site versus, a massive building just sort of planted down and a large parking area planted down in that particular area of the site. So again, I think this is a really fantastic project, but maybe just take a little bit more investigation into how this facility fits on the site in its current sort of state, and working with the site to really create a project that is well integrated and feels greater than the sum of its parts. I think I should also say too that I would be in support of the demolition.
Do you want to, would the applicant like to respond in terms of their process in consideration of how this building was set?
Yeah, I can speak to that for sure. And I appreciate your comments, and I do understand where you're come from. There were a couple of things that we thought a lot about in terms of siting. And one of them was, given the footprint, which is the footprint for a number of reasons, some of which I've talked about, which is trying to make sure that the folks who will be using this facility have a beautiful view in their last days. And in order to do that, it does create somewhat the shape that we've talked about. Rather than stringing them in a long string, we did create this sort of Y-shaped or W-shaped configuration, because it actually condensed the footprint of the building a little bit and allowed us to reduce that sort of incredibly linear, another option, which would have been very, very linear. The other thing that we were very conscious of is, we are fitting into a neighborhood, and there are a lot of neighbors on Maple Cliff Road, just south on the screen here, west in reality. But we didn't want the building to be right up against their backyards, and so the minimum setback is, I think, 30 feet, and our building corner to the site property line is 77 feet. So we wanted to push the building away from those smaller single family homes. Although, because of the character of the footprint and the nature of the architecture as we've designed it so far, you're looking at things at different angles, so they won't be presented with, sort of a big long facade. They'll be seeing the corner of parts of the building, and I think it won't feel out of character. The other thing, speaking of vegetation, is we are going to maintain, to the extent possible, all the vegetation that exists along that border now, and in fact enhance it and add to it, so that there's a landscaping buffer that exists now, but we're going to make that even more robust, so that going forward, the neighbors are protected from the new building on this site. The parking, there are some logistic issues that we have to be aware of. So although not all patients using this building are older, often they are. End of life is, being what it is. And their families are often older as well. And so we do need the parking to be close to the front entrance so that we can minimize the amount of walking that these families and visitors need to do as they come to the site. I think the other thing that we were trying to do was to preserve the property along Lakeshore and sort of really minimize what the difference will, what it will feel like along Lakeshore Boulevard, and keep the building and the parking away from that. So that along Lakeshore Boulevard, you know, with the trees that remain and some other landscaping that we do, you know, I think you're going to see glimpses of the building from Lakeshore Boulevard, but I don't think, you know, it won't be front and center. It's not going to be, it's not really going to change that experience if you walk along the sidewalk there dramatically. And again, the service and loading dock area, we purposefully put that on the east side of the building because it's up against, you know, the high school and the existing hospice campus, and it's not up against, you know, someone's backyard. So as trucks and deliveries come to and from on the campus, and, you know, obviously the funeral home traffic that will be coming to and from on the campus, we really tried to keep that on the east side of the property away from the other more residential scale side of the property. We will do our very best to maintain the trees that exist. As you know, they are kind of scattered through that middle section. And I should mention too that the landscaping that exists now along the eastern side against the hospice property and the high school property will also be maintained to the extent possible. Obviously, we have a few things we have to do in terms of stormwater management and making sure we have correct fire lanes around the building. But other than that, we are going to do our best to preserve the trees. We are going to work with our landscape architect and the city arborist to make sure that if some trees need to be removed, that we know what they are and that we replace them in kind with new trees that will grow up in that same location. There are some nice trees out there. There are also some trees that look nice from a distance, and when you get up close to them, you realize that they're not in such great condition, and some of them probably need to come down sooner rather than later, in all fairness. So I know that may or may not address all of your concerns, but just to give you a little bit more feedback on what we were thinking about as we were trying to lay the site out.
I thank you. I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair, I missed something in our staff report.
Go ahead, Carl.
Is there a bus shelter at any point on this property?
Along Lakeshore Boulevard?
Along Lakeshore Boulevard?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that whole question. You're very quiet.
Carl,
I'm sorry.
Carl is asking if there's any bus shelter that exists along Lakeshore Boulevard with the RTA service.
Not, I'm going to maybe defer to you, Bob, a little bit, but
Yeah.
in case you know the answer, but not in front of our property here that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I think over by the school, there is a bus stop.
Yeah, that would make sense. That would be something at the school.
Yeah, I was just thinking about if there was a stop in front for employees who might use public transportation, being closer to that pathway to come up. But I think if it's up by the school, then that's fine. I just wasn't sure about that.
All right, any other comments or questions? Does the applicant feel like you've gotten sufficient feedback to help you advance with your project? Did you hear my question?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I couldn't quite hear.
I just,
Some of you were very quiet. Others I can hear loud and clear.
Push the mic back down. Yeah, this is Bob Strickland. And so I think we've exhausted all of our questions and comments. And I just wanted to ensure that you felt like you've gotten sufficient direction to help you advance the design of your project.
Yeah, I think so. I feel like the conversation we had last week with the local group and then with you today, I think there's some similarities in some of the questions and comments, and they do feel like they've been positive comments. So we're very glad to hear that people feel that way about the project.
I have one further question. I think from the design review committee, they suggested creating some kind of, not memorial, but some kind of structure or representation to reflect the history of the facilities that occupied this site previously. And it looked like in the barn, there were some maybe bricks or masonry elements that had been salvaged. So is the applicant, do you agree with the comments of trying to develop some kind of a representation of what may have existed there previously?
One of the things that we're considering is looking at that shoreline development. Similar to what they have down at Euclid Beach, down the ways, where they have the various information panels about the history of it. Looking at that would probably give us a bigger audience than if we put something out by Lakeshore, and it would tell the whole story. So one thought is to integrate it into that project, and again, that way the community can access all that information and really have a chance to pause and actually read it and understand it.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to respect the history of the site and what had existed there previously. All right. Well, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing your project advance. Okay, that's the last of our concept plans. We'll move on to appointments to the Design Review Advisory Committees.
All right, so, yes. Second here. All right, so as you guys are all aware, we've been working for the better part of a year now on sort of retooling our design review process. We've come up with new geographies. We've found new nominees. We tried to, find a balance between residents, building business owners, design professionals, and historic preservation professionals. So I think what we'll present here today and what we've emailed out previously as far as the resumes of all of the nominees you see listed on the agenda. I think these give us good committees to work with. We're ready to hit the ground running with meetings starting next week. And so I guess what we really need now is you guys to formally appoint these committee members if you're willing. Some of these are new members. Some were on the committees that had their geographies changed. So this one sees a blend of I guess people from a couple different committees and then some new folks as well. So I don't know. I guess our thinking was, unless there were questions, comments on particulars, that someone would make a motion to appoint, the people listed on each committee, and we just go
So
through.
we'll do a motion for the appointment to each committee.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. And I can read the names if you don't want to try and.
Okay. Yeah.
Last names are always tricky. So.
Right. All right. So I don't know if my commission members, so we're going to consider the appointment of members of the Greater Cuyahoga Valley Historic Design Review Advisory Committee first. And so we're going to be voting on a motion to confirm the appointment of each of the individuals to each of these individual committees. So before we ask for a motion, is looking at the very first advisory committee for Greater Cuyahoga Valley Historic Design Review. Any of our commissioners have any comments on any of the candidates, pro or con, that are listed for appointment? Michelle?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I tried to review the resumes that we received. I try to look at all of them. And it looks like we have a lot of really good qualified candidates. Some of them really seem outstanding. I think that, you know, they'll be great assets to these committees. My only, you know, my only concern is it seems to be kind of weighed heavily towards architects, and I think that's obvious. It's obvious that you can bring an architect onto committees like this. It seems like an obvious fit. It just seemed like I don't know how you can incorporate a broader net to, you know, include, you know, maybe craftspeople or people who might not be architects, but they've restored old buildings. I just wanted to bring that up. I'm not saying that we need to redo this process, but, you know, something to consider in the future, because these are going to be rotating chairs, rotating seats. So that was, I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Good comment. And what is the term?
They're 2-year terms, and through the chair to Ms. Anderson, you know, you'll notice that most of the committees do have, you know, we're allowed up to 11 members per committee. There is still some room for additional membership on each of these. So these are the names that we're ready to move forward with now. We have been talking to other, you know, members in the community, in particular craftspeople, like you mentioned. I'd like to have, you know, sort of some specialists scattered throughout the committees that we can call in, you know, to the different committees as they're needed, like, you know, a mason, someone who knows stained glass, somebody who knows windows, somebody, you know, just these different types of very technical issues that we run into from time to time. And, you know, while architects know design and structure and that sort of thing, the details of a historic window might be a little different and outside their wheelhouse. So I hear your comment, and we are working on it. You know, this gets us off the ground and running, but we anticipate coming, you know, in the next few months with some additional additions, I guess.
Like, yeah, for this first committee, there's 8 members that will be voting on. So there's 3 vacant positions, and you can work to try to fill those with different talents.
Yes.
Okay. All right. If there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chairman?
Dreyer.
Mr. Dreyer?
Are these all city residents?
They are not all city residents. There's not a requirement that the design review committee members be city residents. Unlike Landmarks Commission members have to be city residents, but the design review committee members don't. So, you know, we tried to pick people with connection to the communities they're representing, whether they live there or not. You know, some of them might work there, some of them might have you know, have some connection to that area. You know, by not being city residents, you know, they can't take the next step and ultimately serve on the Landmarks Commission, which, you know, we kind of view the you know, these design review committees as kind of training grounds for the commission. So obviously those people wouldn't be able to move on, but otherwise I think their, you know, their expertise and you know, willingness to serve on a committee kind of, you know, is outweighs the fact that they don't actually live in the city. It's my feeling.
Does that answer your question, Alan?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the chair would entertain a motion for appointment of the representatives listed to appointment to the Greater Cuyahoga Valley Historic Design Review Advisory Committee.
I'll make a motion to appoint.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second.
Okay.
All right.
Dan's up to you to sort that out.
I heard Michelle's voice, so we'll give it to you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Dan, please call a roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dreyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Lozier?
Yes.
Mr. Sambry? Yes. Mr. Tresick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Mr. Strickland.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion passes unanimously.
All right, next is the Greater Downtown Historic Design Review Advisory Committee. Any specific questions or discussion? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the candidates on this committee.
Make a motion to
Okay.
approve or appoint.
Okay, Mr. Lozier, that's excellent. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion to appoint.
Okay, we're on a roll.
All right.
We have a motion and a second.
I'll
No further
second. I'm
discussion.
sorry. You're cutting in and out.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Dan, please call roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray, Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sambry,
Yes.
Mr. Tresick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Mr. Strickland.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Chair would ask for a motion to approve the candidates for the position on the Greater Northeast Historic Design Review Advisory Committee.
I'll make a motion to appoint.
So we have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion and a second. No further discussion. Dan, please call
All
roll.
right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sambry,
Yes.
Mr. Tresick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Mr. Strickland.
Yes.
All right,
All right, moving on.
passes.
I'm looking for a motion to approve the candidates to be appointed to the Historic Ohio City Design Review Advisory Committee.
I do have a question. So looking at the agenda and looking at the list, I think there might be one name missing on the list on the screen. Whitney Anderson.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, sorry about
The
that.
agenda is correct.
Wow,
Yeah.
good catch. Must do constructability reviews.
Yeah, right? Yeah, we did send up the, send out an amended agenda, because we got a couple in
Yeah.
So is
just
this
after we sent it, so the
Correct.
agenda is
So-
correct, yeah.
not based
Yeah.
on the listing of names on the
Yes.
published agenda?
And I believe the differences are, Ms. Anderson and then, Ms. Rosalina, or it was, okay. There was one other one that we added. Oh, Cardenas to
I
the,
think we already
downtown.
voted on that.
We already did
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
So the agenda is correct.
It's already in.
Sorry.
All right, so a motion for the Historic Ohio City?
I'll make a motion to appoint based on the list that's included on the Landmarks Commission agenda.
Agenda. Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second.
And Mr. Sandberg. No further discussion. Dan, please call a roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yeah.
Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sambry,
Yes.
Mr. Tresick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Mr. Strickland.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you very much. Lastly, we're looking for a motion to approve the candidates for appointment for the Historic West Cleveland Design Review Advisory Committee.
Make a motion to appoint.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Motion and multiple seconds.
Double seconds.
No further discussion. Dan, please call the roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Lozier,
Yes.
Mr. Sambry,
Yes.
Mr. Tresick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Mr. Strickland.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the motion passes unanimously. We now
Wonderful.
have brand new
Thank you,
design
Mr.
review
Lozier,
committees.
for leading.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
All right, and so we'll move on to administrative reports.
So I think you all saw the email I sent out just the other day. The director is looking for headshots and CVs or resumes for everyone just to put up on the website once that's finalized. So thank you to those who've already sent them. And for everyone else, I think she set a deadline of April 4th. But that's all in the email. So just wanted to remind you of that. And then I guess just wanted to bring to everyone's attention, unfortunately, this morning there was a fire at the Pentecostal Church of God at East 91st and Miles Park. It looks pretty severe, so that is a landmark that, you know, I anticipate they'll do an emergency demolition of, so we've lost a landmark and that does not leave much of that district left. If we're able today, we're gonna try and go out and make a site visit today and just see what is left of the district, because it is both locally listed and on the National Register. And yeah, I'll be talking to the folks in Columbus about whether it still maintains enough integrity to be a National Register district. And then I guess, depending on how that goes, we can have the discussion about local landmarking and whether it still makes sense. Or, I mean, the larger buildings in that district, the few of them that there are individually designated, so they'd still have protection. So more to come on that, but it looks like, Michelle, did you have?
Yeah, isn't that near where the roof collapsed on another church? I think it was a Presbyterian church.
It's the same church. It's the one, it's been vacant for a number of years. The roof kind of blew off the side, collapsed last year. And so now it's burnt. The roof is gone. So that issue is resolved. But if you look it up online, it's the fire was very, I mean, completely gutted. It just left the brick structure around the outside. So it's, yeah.
Another lost historic structure.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Any further administrative reports?
Not on my end.
I know, Jessica, you've got a site visit coming up.
Oh, yes, yes, so we do have a site visit scheduled for next week over at 6200 Ellen for a demolition through the Demolition Bureau. And so if you're able to make it, feel free to invite the local committee as well. It's in the Franklin West Clinton Historic District.
Okay.
And then just one more thing. I just wanted to thank Jessica for the whole design review reconfiguration thing with the keeping track of the names and spreadsheets and maps and everything, the forms, updating. I mean, aside from that one glaring mistake. No, but truly appreciate all the work she's put into this, because it has not been a small undertaking.
I'm sure it's quite an undertaking. We appreciate it.
I do have a question about the Ellen project. So that's coming through the Demolition Bureau and not an applicant looking to demolish and.
Correct. Yeah, so it's, yeah, there's typically with those, the grade and seed is the, future use of the project. So they're much more based on condition as opposed to, like we saw today, balancing, is replacing these two structures with a, new hospice worthwhile. It's a kind of a different standard, I guess, but.
With no further business, we'll adjourn our meeting and see everyone on April 11th.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.